Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Titans Monday. And the Titans got a victory yesterday. Congratulations to the Tennessee Titans. They have now won more games this season than the 1919 Chicago White Sox did in the World Series, and they were trying to lose. They threw the World Series, and they won 3 games. The Titans have now won 4. Ian is here today, back from his vacation. Ian, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am outstanding. I'm glad you had a wonderful vacation, but we got business to get to, including this unbelievable little nugget in a story from Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal, which we will get to at the top of next hour, and Greg Bedard will join us at 4:30. Apparently, word on the street is things are not rosy between Mike Vrabel and Ran Carthon. Surprise, I know. But I want to start on yesterday's game. That was depressing. That was a depressing win for the Titans. And I'm going to start with the number one reason why it was so bad. And first of all, a win's a win, and I get it. And I'm not one to sit there and say, tank. I don't want my team to lose. At the same time, I like the idea of picking 5th more than I like the idea of picking 11th again, where I may not be able to get a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Malik Neighbors or any of those good receivers. But that's a different discussion, I guess, for a different day. I want my team to win. I don't know about you guys, but it was depressing because that Panther team is truly the worst team in the NFL. Like, when I think on a yearly basis about what defines worst team in the NFL, I go naturally to the one time that the Titans had the worst team in the NFL, which was the 2015 season. And in the middle of it, Ken Whisenhunt got fired, just like Frank Reich got fired today. Now, I think that Whisenhunt was a little bit more of a stiff than Reich. I think they were both bad coaches. But Whisenhunt got fired in the middle of the year. But the talent on that football team was so bad that Floyd Reese told me, I've been doing this for 40 years, and that's the worst collection of talent I have ever seen on a football team. Talking about the 2015 Titans. That Panther team yesterday, that might have had less talent than that 2015 Titans team. I mean, it's Brian Burns, Bryce Young, and a bunch of freaking bums, including that left tackle, who a lot of people thought was the number 1 pick, or should have been the number 1 pick in the 22 draft, Ike Ekwonu. Oh, he's awful. And Arden Key had a field day with him. And so not only are the Panthers so bad, but in the first half of yesterday's game, and I picked the Panthers to win. I picked the Panthers to win 24-17 because I didn't think you could play any defense, and I thought you'd score 17 points. And I was right about the 17. I guess I just overrated the Panthers' offense. But in the first half, I'm watching the game, I'm like, man, I did not account for how bad this Panther team is. And then in the second half, when you sat on 17 points for the entire hour and a half of that half, I'm like, oh my God, the Panthers might come back and win this game. I've got Will Levis throwing hospital balls and putting the ball, 8 yards behind DeAndre Hopkins. And, I mean, I was sitting there thinking, oh, my goodness, Carolina may come back and win this game. When Carolina got the ball at the end of the game, I didn't think Carolina was going to score. But I was thinking, I'm like, if Carolina scores, it's one Christian Fulton busted coverage away from Carolina scoring. And then if I'm Carolina, I'm going to go for 2. And I might get it because the one time that we had a 4th down, the Titans just decided deep down in the low red zone, the Titans just decided to leave the A-gap wide open. They ran right through for a touchdown. So what's stopping them now? That's how bad it was. And quite frankly, the sad part about the realization of watching the game yesterday and thinking, oh my God, the Panthers might come back and win. The sad part was it wouldn't have been the end of the world if they had. Like, if they had won, then you would officially know that you are unequivocally freaking terrible. Now, I still think you're terrible, and I think a majority of you still think they're terrible. But, I mean, I even heard today Vrabel got asked, and I think it was by Corey, of all people. Vrabel got asked, do you look at this Colts game like win this and you're back in the race? I'm like, Corey, they just scored 17 points against the Panthers. I mean, I'm trying, hold on, this is my notes here, what the drives were like in the second half. And it wasn't like Carolina's defense was just, the 2000 Ravens out there. I mean, you just got Will Levis throwing the ball 8 feet behind DeAndre. Here you go. Punt. Then the second drive was a punt. The third drive was a punt. And the fourth drive was, you guessed it, a punt. And then you kneeled down against the worst team in the league. The worst team. The only reason they're not going to have the number one pick is because they traded it in order to get their quarterback, who they are absolutely positively going to ruin. But you didn't lose. So at least now you've won 4 games. At least you finally had a win. But I don't know about you guys. Yesterday, after the game was over, I was kind of depressed. And they won. And I wasn't depressed about draft position or anything else. I think I was just depressed with what horrendous football we had to watch. I mean, I thought about not watching football the rest of the day. I was just so out of it. And I was starting to wonder, was I a little too footballed out? Because we had football on Thursday, and then we had college on Friday, and then we had a great day of college on Saturday, and then we had the Titans game on Sunday, and was I just a little footballed out? And so I tried to watch something else, but then by about second half, I was watching Bills and Eagles, and I was all in. And then the whole day, what I like to do is I like to rewatch the game either first thing on a Monday morning, or I like to rewatch it on Sunday night and get kind of all my work done. And I felt like, I'm going to do this and watch Predators at the same time, but I was just dreading watching this game back. I mean, I don't even dread the games that they lose as much as I dreaded watching this one, and I just, it's just awful. But, hey, they won. And I don't know about you, but the celebration of a win, what I love about the NFL is that you can play an entire football game in which there's 120 snaps, right? That may be a little too much. 100 snaps of a football game. And if one field goal kicker misses a 46-yarder to the right, everybody on the team sucks. It's a terrible Sunday. This guy dropped a pass. That guy didn't cover his man. That guy missed a kick. That guy snapped it high. That guy. And if you make the kick, it's coach is a genius, and this guy made a great play, and that guy made a great play, and all those things. And I didn't feel that after yesterday's game. It's almost like I just feel like we're all just wasting our lives watching this Titan team. So I didn't have that feeling because this Panther team is completely and totally rotten. And outside of the sack fumble in which their number one pick 2 years ago, who was supposed to be a franchise left tackle, this guy out of NC State was supposed to be Orlando Pace. And honestly, he wasn't even the best left tackle on the field yesterday. And the other guy, Jalen Duncan, was making his first career start. That's how much of a bust that left tackle for Carolina is. If it's not for that sack fumble where the left tackle just didn't block Arden Key, who smokes Bryce Young from behind, and Simmons comes up with the ball and you score a touchdown, honestly, you might have lost that game. That one play was the difference in the entire game. So even though you won, the reality is that you're terrible. That you're right there with Carolina. Because that game yesterday, you were right there with Carolina. They outgained you. They had more first downs than you. They owned the time of possession by like 8 minutes over you. You, Carolina, Chicago, New England, the Giants, Arizona. Just terrible. And so I don't want to sound like the guy who's, negative Nelly after a win, because everybody will tell you in the NFL a win's a win. But, woo, that win yesterday, I mean, that was some just ugly football. I thought the weather outside, just gloomy, was a perfect forecast for those two teams out there. And then how about this performative art by the owner of the Panthers? This guy is such a stooge. I mean, I got my issues with Titans ownership, but this guy for the Panthers, apparently he walked by all the reporters, put his head in his hands, and yelled the F word. You think that wasn't on purpose? You think, here's the media people, let me act up for them. And that's the team that, again, two massive mistakes on their part, a sack fumble that you turn into a touchdown, and not rushing anybody at the end of the first half to allow you to get in position to kick that 53-yard field goal. That's the difference. That's the only reason you won against the worst team in the NFL that reminds me of the worst Titans team that I have ever seen. That is depressing. I'm so depressed talking about it now that we all had to watch it. And hopefully Sunday's game against the Colts, and we're not going to spend 5 days on the Colts, trust me. But hopefully next Sunday's game against the Colts will be an equally as competitive battle against a much better team. But I didn't walk out of that win yesterday. And again, I'm not here to sit there and poo-poo wins in the NFL because a win is a win and all of that. But, man, that game yesterday was tough to watch. That Carolina team is terrible. And the fact that you had to hang on for dear life when after the first quarter of that game, I'm like, you're going to blow these guys out. They're terrible, is depressing. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phone. 615-737-1025. Again, Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal, who has a juicy little nugget about Vrabel and Ran Carthon, will join us later today at 4:30. You know what? I had put the show together today, Ian, and then I forgot about what we normally do in the second segment of Titans Mondays after the Titans win, because I guess it's been so long since they've won a game.
Yeah, that's right. Might have to scrape the barrel for these.
I mean, we got to give away some game balls, right? Somebody has to get them. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 and your thoughts on the game. Stillman and Company on a Titans Monday, 102.5-106.3 The Game.
15th play for a drive that started back at the 9. And it's again to Derrick Henry. Banging his way, burrowing forward. It's a touchdown for the Titans. He's over 9,000 career rushing yards. And he's got his 5th touchdown of the year.
That's called bring your own blocker, Adam. There's nothing there. You're running into white jerseys. Just keep your head down, keep those legs churning, and find that end zone. Look at him drop down, use that power, and just keep his feet moving. Man, I'll tell you what, he's a frightening individual when he's got that ball in his hands.
Here's Henry. Derrick Henry breaks a tackle. Derrick Henry's got his 2nd touchdown of the day.
That right there is why you continue to feed that guy, because eventually, even if you're getting 1 yard of carry, you're going to break it. And watch not only Derrick Henry, but watch, you've got Hopkins right there off the edge, sees the blitz, moves up to the 2nd level safety, missed tackle by Luvu, and the rest is history. Derrick Henry taking it to the house.
So the first touchdown for Derrick Henry was bring your own blocker, because nobody blocked for him. So Derrick ran into the guy and then just kept running into the end zone for a touchdown. The second was Derrick made this guy miss, then Derrick made that guy miss, then Derrick glided gracefully into the end zone. And I have it right here. You know, Derrick Henry stiff arm for open grass, and then I thought good blocks by Hopkins and NWI for the 2nd touchdown. So we always give away game balls whenever the Titans win, the 2nd segment of a Titans Monday. This is a long-standing tradition. It used to be the GM's. Now I guess it's mine. Derrick Henry gets a game ball. Is there any debating whether or not Derrick Henry deserves the offensive game ball, Ian?
There's no one else to give it to.
There is nobody else to give that game ball to. Derrick Henry gets it. First of all, 9,000 career rushing yards is absolutely nothing to scoff at. I mean, that is special. You know, I watched the Barry Sanders documentary. I don't know if you guys have seen it. The Barry Sanders documentary that came out over the weekend. And I see so many parallels between Barry Sanders and Derrick Henry. And as I watch this documentary, the more it breaks my heart for Derrick that he broke his foot at the end of that 2021 season, in the middle of that season, because I think he had 900-something yards. He was going to run for 2,000. 10,000 is like the magic Hall of Fame number that if you get 10,000 and you've got a good career, like if Derrick can eke out another 1,000, then he's got a true case for the Hall of Fame. I mean, a real true case. But if Derrick had won 3 straight rushing titles and had 2 2,000-yard seasons and had 10,000 yards, he's in the Hall of Fame, no question. And so it just kind of broke my heart again. But 9,000 yards is absolutely nothing to scoff at. Had many impressive runs yesterday. Some were aided by the offensive line, and quite frankly, some weren't. Some he got the ball, and I've said this all season, where I'll see Derrick Henry get the ball, and it looks like it's going to be a 2-yard loss, and somehow it's a 5-yard gain, and I'm like, that's the most impressive 5-yard gain I think I've ever seen. And I thought Derrick Henry was fabulous yesterday. Vrabel said after the game they need to start blocking for him. I agree. Derrick Henry gets a game ball. Defense, and I have been waffling through this all day. Jeffrey Simmons was the best player on the defense yesterday, and so I'm going to give Jeffrey Simmons a game ball. And we only give one, but I was very tempted to give it to Arden Key because that strip sack basically decided the game, and quite frankly, because we hadn't heard from Arden Key in forever. But the more I thought about it today, the more I'm like, you know what, that's not fair to Simmons. That's grading on a curve. That's saying, okay, well, Arden Key has stunk this year, so congratulations, Arden Key, for showing up and making a couple of plays yesterday. But Simmons was dominant all game long. I got to give Simmons credit. The season is over. The team stinks. They even said on the broadcast that Simmons thinks there's still a chance for the playoffs. He's on drugs if he thinks that. There's no chance for the playoffs. They have to win every game the rest of the year. They are not going to Miami in 2 weeks and beating the Dolphins, so we can forget about it. But Simmons the last 2 weeks has played with his ass on fire. And so Simmons gets a game ball. He's got to. He recovered the fumble. He was all over the quarterback yesterday. How about that one where he breaks a double team, shoots through, and then eats the quarterback, like swallows him full for a sack. And he did it for the entire game. So Simmons gets a game ball. Then special teams. Now, we haven't had a lot of game balls to give out this year, Ian. But I'm not sure that my kicker job for the most part punting yesterday, has really learned to put the ball inside the 20, sometimes inside the 10, has really learned how to kick it directionally. You know, before, everybody was like, Stonehouse is the man. I'm like, congratulations, he can bang the ball 90 yards, but it doesn't do you any good when he kicks it out of the end zone at midfield.
Net punt, good net punt average.
I don't care. But he was putting the ball inside the 10 a little bit yesterday, which I did like. But Nick Foles' 53-yarder, those were bad conditions. It was cold. It was rainy. It was misty. It was crappy. And he drilled that sucker for 53 yards. I mean, just freaking drilled it. And so, you know, somebody texted in and said, Jared, remember when you thought the Titans were going to win 10 or 11 games this year? Yes, I do. Which shows you that I've been wrong, and I'm willing to admit to being wrong. The Tennessee Titans are riddled with problems in the 2023 season. Kicker is not one of them. It was one thing when he hit a 50-yarder in the dome, and it was like, what do you think of his leg now? I'm like, it's a 50-yarder in the dome. It's another thing when it's 53 yards, he's 53 years old, and it's terrible outside like it was yesterday. So he gets a game ball. So Henry gets a game ball. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Simmons gets a game ball. I think he was the best defensive player on the field. And again, we're only giving away one, so Simmons gets it. And then Nick Folk gets a game ball yesterday for kicking that 53-yarder right down the pipe. 615-737-1025. Our text line and phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I have not gotten to every text message yet, but I have gotten to a lot of them, and I was thinking that there's kind of my negative attitude towards yesterday's game was going to at least give us with some of the boohoo crew that was going to say, Jared, we won a game, and now you're sitting here poo-pooing it, and you're... I have not gotten one of those text messages up until this point. Texter into the text line says, barely beat a trash team to get a worse draft pick. Yay! Let's celebrate. And that is kind of the depressing part of this, is that it's like, I'm glad he didn't lose to the Panthers because that team is so bad. That team is so bad. So I'm glad you didn't lose to them, but you almost did. And now, because you won that game, I think you're picking 10th now. I mean, I hate losing too. But if you're going to suck, I mean, that means you're basically going to be picking the same spot you picked last year. And these guys that are running this team, they're going to draft a returner or a field goal holder or something. I mean, if they're going to draft a guard at 11, who's to say that they're not going to go out there and draft a left fielder? I mean, there's no way to know with these guys. So I'm like, oh, crap. Oh, crap. Now they're going to take a punter, and they're going to say, well, but he's the best. Roll the dice, play the board. He's our best player on the board. You already have a punter. But that's a different discussion for a different day. Coach says, don't know if Jared knows Carolina's defense is in the top 7 of total defense, passing defense, rushing defense, and points allowed. I do know that. In fact, yesterday on the pregame show and on Six Pack Picks, I picked Carolina to win the game. In fact, now that I think about it, I really think that the Titans might be the only game that I missed this entire week in Six Pack Picks. And I picked Carolina because I looked at it and I'm like, well, Carolina's offense sucks. Tennessee's offense sucks. Tennessee's defense sucks. Carolina's defense doesn't suck. So I'll take the Panthers. So, to sit there and say like, hey, you don't recognize how good Carolina's defense is. It's like, dude, trust me, I did, and that's why I picked them. Texter into the text line says, and again, this is something that we will get to at 3 o'clock and with Greg Bedard, who actually wrote this. The idea that there have been issues with Ran Carthon's job performance dating back to San Francisco is completely unfounded, says this texter. Carthon was instrumental, the texter says, in building the 49ers roster. First of all, let me say two things. One, you have no idea about either. You have no idea that it is unfounded for Greg Bedard to write that. Secondly, we will ask Greg Bedard about that. And third, you have no idea what he did for the 49ers roster. You have no idea. Just like I have no idea what he did for the 49ers roster. I have no idea. You never know. Like, you never know what somebody does in an operation unless it's a performance that you're watching. Like, you know who plays quarterback, so you can analyze their job performance. But you don't know how much Tim Kelly did last year as the passing game coordinator because you're not there. So to sit there and argue things that you have, there's no way for you to know that, is just ridiculous. Andrew says the Titans drafted a left guard at 11 last year. What about a right guard at 11 coming up this year? Maybe something. Texture says, I'm glad you're calling it the way it is. I cannot stand the we're back crowd. That is the worst team I have ever seen in the Panthers. Ian, I have a term, by the way, I've dubbed, you know how I don't listen to Robbie and Joe or Caroline or Chase and Joe? I don't listen to the shows on a Titans Monday because I don't want it to warp my brain with takes and things like that. So I was talking to Robbie about this today. I call it my my sports opinion virginity. So I have not lost my sports opinion virginity today. So I don't know what other people are saying. Is there a we're back crowd?
No.
So who's this guy's like, I can't stand the we're back crowd. I'm like, who's the we're back crowd? 615-737-1025. The most disappointing thing about yesterday's game I want to touch on. We'll do that next, then we'll get right back to your phone. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there, while I have your attention, that tomorrow it's your chance to participate in Pred's Pick to Click. By the way, the Predators are kicking ass. The second that we said embrace the tank, the Predators have not lost a game since then, which is amazing. And, you know, hey, that's my coach, Ian. There you go. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds game. Participate with Robbie and Joe tomorrow at 8:45. Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
As you said, a win is a win, but it's a little frustrating the second half. You guys weren't able to get any points.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were stagnant all second half, which is tough. But, we got to just focus on watch the film and learn from it. But to have a first half like that and to play complementary football with the defense and to have that great feeling at halftime to then roll out and just kind of be meh for the rest of the game, it's unacceptable. We got to be able to keep it rolling and keep putting our foot on the gas and finish these types of games out.
There's your quarterback, Will Levis, and I couldn't agree more with what he said. And I got to tell you, I thought that yesterday was by far Will Levis's worst performance as quarterback of the Titans. Falcons game was obviously his best performance. I was very impressed by the Thursday nighter at Pittsburgh, and I thought he did a good job against Jacksonville. And I think we kind of found the anxiety inside of Will Levis that he's going to have to work through, they're going to have to work through when the game gets into crunch time against Tampa Bay. But I thought he played fine against Tampa Bay. I thought he was horrible yesterday. Now, the good news is Levis thought it too and didn't hide from that. And the first step in addressing a problem is always to admit the problem first. But he was awful yesterday. I was disappointed. And I know Carolina might have the best defenses of all the teams that Will Levis played. But I think if Tannehill's the quarterback yesterday, and I'm not arguing that Tannehill should go back in there or anything like that, but I think if Tannehill's the quarterback, I think you probably win. I think you probably hit 28 points again, 27 points, the points you've been scoring at home. You only scored 17 points. You didn't score after halftime. He says you were awful, led by you. I mean, first of all, Levis, and I kept putting in my notes, I'm like, that's a bad ball. And then there'd be some throws where I'm like, that's a great ball. The ball to Chig on the sideline where Jalen Duncan doesn't block Brian Burns. And so he gets a clean lick at Levis, and Levis is looking right at him and doesn't care and stands in there and lollipops the ball to a wide open Chig with just the perfect amount of touch. I'm like, whoa, oh my God, look at that throw. And then after that drive, Levis was terrible. I mean, he's lucky he didn't get Tajay Spears sent to the hospital. And I had people there yesterday that were like, that's not Levis's fault. I'm like, yes, it is. He lollipopped the ball right to Spears with the safety sitting right there. If this were 20 years ago and he makes that throw, and that's Rodney Harrison back there, or that's Ray Lewis back there, or that's one of, those kind of guys, those vicious hitters. I mean, I remember when I was in the 7th grade and Derek almost got in a fight. If he's on the way home, he might remember this. The Titans were playing Tampa Bay in a game that meant nothing at the end of the season to either team. Neil O'Donnell was quarterbacking because Steve McNair was out. And John Lynch basically clotheslined Drew Bennett, and I thought Derek was going to get in a fight on the field. This is before I even knew Derek. And that was 20 years ago. Because if you put that ball right there, a guy like John Lynch is going to try to kill you. Those guys don't exist anymore. They don't play football like that anymore. That ball he threw to Spears, I mean, I watched the replay. I see Spears get jacked up, and I watch the replay, and I'm like, he didn't lead with the helmet. He didn't launch into Spears' head. He didn't do any of those things. And then the TV cuts to Derrick Henry yelling at the Panthers. I'm like, dude, you need to go to the huddle and yell at Will Levis for throwing that ball. I thought that was textbook defense. What's the defender supposed to do? Let the guy catch it? Then in the second half, Levis has that ball for Hopkins, which he hits him, and so you start a drive, and it's like, okay, this feels like they're headed in the right direction. And then the next one, he's got Hopkins open for a 25, 30-yard gain, and he puts the ball 2 yards behind him. That's a simple pitch and catch. And I understand like a 30-yard throw is not easy for everybody, but a 30-yard throw is supposed to be easy for him. He's supposed to be the one with the rocket launcher who can just zip it right in there. And so, I mean, again, Levis has so far to go as far as whether or not he's going to be the man, he's going to be a bum, or he's going to be somewhere in between. He's got so far to go. And there's no way for us to really be able to determine any of that anyways because the Titans are so bad on offense and the personnel is so terrible and the coaching on the offensive line is so bad. There's no way for us to really know that kind of stuff. You know that. But the game that Levis played yesterday was horrible. I mean, it was horrible. He had 2 passes that should have been intercepted. He was horrible. Throws that one ball for DeAndre. Deion Jones is just sitting there, jumps it, and lays on the ground like, oh, I had it in my hands. And so I'd have to say, like, again, there's not a lot left to care about with this season because you're not going to go to the playoffs. And I would like to see, positive developments this year. And the quarterback is the number one of all of those potential positive developments. And he was terrible yesterday. Like, he wasn't bad. He was terrible. But I do appreciate the fact that he was okay with that. One texter says Billy Volek was the quarterback. Wrong, texter. Neil O'Donnell was the quarterback. This was the season finale of 2003. Billy Volek had already played, had beaten the Bills, lacerated his spleen, was out for the season. Steve McNair was the quarterback, and the Titans signed Neil O'Donnell to be the backup for the rest of the year. You want to fight me on this, texter? Billy Volek was not the QB that day. It was Neil O'Donnell. Texter says, I don't think that was a bad throw by Levis. The safety made a hell of a read from a mile away. Look how far he is from Spears when Levis threw it. I haven't seen like the tape. Like I've seen the TV copy. Dude, when you put a ball out there like that, if there's a safety even within a 3-mile radius, you can't throw that ball. A safety or a linebacker or something like that. Again, that is what they call a hospital ball. And Levis threw one of those against Tennessee last year when he was at Kentucky, where he threw the ball to a guy coming off of a slant when it was still a real game between Tennessee and Kentucky. He threw the ball as the guy was coming off the slant, and he hit him right in the hands. The problem was that either the safety or the linebacker, whoever was standing there right in the middle of the field, just popped the receiver as soon as the ball got there, and it got batted up into the air, and it was intercepted and run the other way for Tennessee. Now, I would argue that if the receiver's got his hands on it like that, he's got to catch that ball and bring it in. But at the same time, where Levis put that ball was in position to get that receiver killed. Where he put the ball yesterday was in the position to get Tajay Spears killed. And you can't throw that ball in the NFL. You're going to get your guys hurt. It's just like Vrabel was talking about the offensive line a couple of weeks ago when he said, I tell this to the players, that I'm not worried so much about losing 7 yards on a sack, although he should be because it's very hard for this offense to get 7 yards. He's not worried about losing the 7 yards on the sack. He's worried about getting the quarterback hurt. And I told you guys, after Tannehill, after 2 games, he can't do 15 more of these. Well, it's the same way when you throw a hospital ball for a receiver. Like, he might catch it, but what good does it do you if he's out for the next 6 weeks because he's got a broken wrist because you just the defensive back just went out there and annihilated him? It doesn't do you any good. Boy, one texter is so mad at me. Says you're the Skip Bayless of Nashville radio for saying that Will Levis, who also criticized his own performance yesterday, wasn't great. What are we doing here today, folks? Texter said at the start of the game yesterday, one of the TV guys, and it was Adam Amin, the guy calling the game, said, if you're watching this game, you must really love football. And I laughed for 10 minutes. Boy, can you imagine what it's like when you're doing these games? You're paid handsomely. You're treated very, very well. It's a very plush job. Now, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it is a very plush job. But you get your assignment, and they say you've got Carolina at Tennessee. And you're looking at the Fox exec like, but I've been doing a good job. Don't send me. Yesterday, when I was watching the Eagles and the Bills, Nance and Romo were doing a promo for next week. And they were like, yeah, and a reminder, next week we've got great NFL football, and it starts with the NFL Today with JB, Phil, Boomer, Coach, and Nate as they get you set for a great Week 13 worth of games. And I looked at the games that CBS has because Fox has Philadelphia, San Francisco, which is like the game next week. And CBS doesn't have a single good game. And they have one afternoon game, which nobody across the country is going to get unless you live in the local market. It's like Tampa Bay and somebody. Guess what game Nance and Romo are doing this week, Ian?
What you got?
They're not doing it. They're off.
Oh, boy. They just got the week
They're
off,
off.
huh? Thanksgiving,
they're
huh?
off.
They're
Yeah.
like, all right, we did an extra. We're done.
You did a Cowboy game. You did the Eagles-Bills game. Like, you're off. You're done. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program. And I know that this is not Carolina Panther Radio. And this might be the extent of Carolina Panther talk that we do. But I do have to get something off of my chest, and then we'll get back to your phones. Here on Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Hey, be sure to join us again at Teddy's Tavern Sunday, 9:30 for the award-winning pregame show, where we'll break down the Titans and the Colts and whatever else is going on as far as the Titans are concerned. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and The Beast Unleashed.
So tough, though, when you're flip-flopping guys inside. You're trying to figure out what that set is, and you don't have your starters, and you're having backups come in. They're really hard to be on time and have your cadence down and everything else.
Play fake. Arden Key hits Bryce Young, and that ball belongs to Jeffrey Simmons. Arden Key with his first sack in almost 2 months leads to a turnover.
Well, right here, you want to keep your shoulders square to the line of scrimmage, not perpendicular, and you see how he gets turned automatically. That's going to create an opening, and that opening for Ekwonu opens that up for Arden Key, who just makes a nice roll, and then Simmons right there to pick it up. But anytime you open your shoulders like that, it creates a soft edge for the pass rusher. Arden Key takes advantage of that.
So I don't remember, or I haven't watched really any Ike Ekwonu after the Panthers drafted him with the 6th overall pick in the 2022 draft. But I do remember the lead up to that draft. And there was all this talk about who was the best player, whether it was Aiden Hutchinson, whether it was Jamison Williams, or Trayvon Walker, or Ike Ekwonu, or Evan Neal, or all these guys. Like, who's the best player of this 2022 class? And there was talk that he might be it. And then I watched yesterday. He is so bad. He's worse than Dennis Daly. They moved on from Dennis Daly and used the 6th overall pick on a guy who is worse than Dennis Daly. We're mad that you moved on from Dennis Daly, gave Andre Dillard $10 million, and that he's worse than Dennis Daly. But this guy they used the 6th pick in the draft on. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time bemoaning the prospects of the Carolina Panthers because I don't care. This isn't Charlotte radio, and most of us don't care. They fired their coach today. I mean, Frank Reich, I think he's a bum, but at the same time, I don't think that Vince Lombardi could coach that team, so I'm not sure it makes much of a difference. But that team is so bad. They remind me of the Titans team, that 2015 Ken Wisenhunt team. It reminds me of that team without that number 1 overall draft choice that John Robinson spun into like 9 different players, including Jonnu Smith, Derrick Henry, Jack Conklin, and Corey Davis. Like, that is what helped you get out of the cellar, was that pick, and how you traded back and got all those assets and built your team around Mariota and went out and got Ben Jones. And they don't even have that pick because they traded everything that they had in order to be able to draft Bryce Young, who might not even be better than the guy who was drafted 1 pick after him. I know right now it looks like the number 2 guy is much better than the number 1 guy, but I'm old enough to remember that Rick Meyer, after 1 year, looked better than Drew Bledsoe. So I'm not going to immediately say it's over right now, but I don't see a way out for Carolina. I don't see a way out. And their owner is one. I don't understand how these people get so rich. And, I'll read stories about, the bond market and things like that. And I'm reading an article and it's just right over my head. So I might be bad at being rich. I don't know. Or bad at learning how to be rich. This guy is supposedly like the richest owner in the NFL outside of the Walmart family. And he might be the stupidest owner in the NFL. I mean, I would have never hired Frank Reich to begin with, but this guy is so impatient. This guy wants a new quarterback every year. This guy, it's like we're rebuilding, so we trade away Christian McCaffrey. Well, don't you think that Christian McCaffrey would help Bryce Young right now? Well, we need the quarterback, so let's trade away DJ Moore in order to get the quarterback. Well, then who's the quarterback going to throw to? The only guy he's got out there is Papa Adam Thielen. And this guy's going to go hire a new coach next year. And then after he hires that new coach next year, he's going to fire him after 6 weeks. And he'll hire a new GM. And I'm sure by then they'll give up on Bryce Young. I'm like, this team, it depresses me watching that team. And they're not even my team, and they're that bad. Let's go to Michael, who's been waiting patiently and is up next at 615-737-1025. What's up, Michael?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I understand that you can't double team every single player, every single play, but I knew before even coming into the game that Derek Brown was going to be a problem because he's about 330 pounds lined up on Aaron Brewer. I knew the second that he was singled up on him, he was just going to blow right by him because, it's like, dude's got 60 pounds on your center, And I remember I think it was somewhere early in the first quarter where he just blew something up because he was one-on-one with Aaron Brewer. And the same thing goes with Brian Burns singled up on Dylan Radins, I think either in the same quarter or the same half. And it's like Dylan Radins can only do so much because we know who he is, and Brian Burns is one of the best pass rushers in the league. But, I mean, we got to do something to help our offensive linemen out against guys that we know can wreck games like those big guys.
See, I could be wrong about this, Michael, and I appreciate your call. I totally agree about Brewer. I mean, I've bitched enough about Brewer. Trevor's told you 100 times that he's too small to play in the NFL. James Lofton's told you that he's too small to play in the NFL. Derek's told you that he's too small to play in the NFL. There's only one person, maybe two, I don't know, Ran Carthon, Vrabel, who knows who's in charge. One of those two thinks Aaron Brewer's big enough to play in the NFL. They're the only person on the planet who thinks that. And yesterday, Derek Brown just literally picked him up and just pushed him back in there. Now, the Radins thing with Brian Burns, I could be wrong about this. I actually didn't have a problem with Radins on that because I don't expect Radins to be able to block Brian Burns one-on-one. And also because the job of the tackles in this step up, because as soon as he dropped back, Burns' arm was over there grabbing Levis, so he wouldn't be able to step up. So I don't know how mad to be at Radins. I'm not mad at him. I mean, I think the bigger concern is left tackle, whether it's Duncan or Dillard, and I think it's going to be Duncan probably the rest of the year. I mean, Duncan had some nice run blocks yesterday, and again, I haven't watched the tape, and I reserve all right to change my mind once I watch the actual tape. But there were a couple where he just didn't block the right guy or didn't block anybody, including the one where he just didn't block Brian Burns, and it ended up being a completion to Okonkwo, and Levis stared it down and got drilled, and I appreciate Levis's, chutzpah to stand in the pocket and get drilled while he delivered that ball. But, dude, you got to give some resistance against Brian Burns. I know he's Brian Burns. I know you're a sixth-rounder who led the Big Ten in sacks allowed last year, but you got to give me something there. So, Radins, I mean, he's going to be bad, but he's not that bad. He's whatever. Brewer's too small, we know that. And then Duncan, it's a work in progress. 615-737-1025. The Boston Sports Journal has a very interesting column about the future of the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick and Gerard Mayo and Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft, and has a very fascinating nugget about your coach and your GM. We'll get to that coming up next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there that Robbie and Rex wrote on Friday will be broadcasting live for the grand opening of a new Dunkin' location in Franklin at 1441 New Highway 96 West. 102.5 The Game will be on site from 6 to 9 a.m. So stop by and have your chance to win a lot of great prizes. That is the new Dunkin' location, 1441 New Highway 96 West. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. Ian, today I am $7 poorer.
Why? What happened?
I am now a subscribing member to the Boston Sports Journal.
Oh, is that a monthly thing, $7 a month, or was that a one-time fee?
It is a monthly thing. I do not know if I will be paying for the second month, but Greg Bedard of Boston Sports Journal, who wrote this doozy about Mike Vrabel, will be joining us at 4:30, so get excited about that. So let's start with what was actually written. And this is why I bought a subscription to read the whole thing, because as opposed to just seeing what was on Twitter and just deciding that was all I want to read the whole thing for full context. It is an entire story about the Patriots, which you would expect at Boston Sports Journal. And what it basically does is it says, what's next for the Patriots? Where's Robert Kraft going to go? What Robert Kraft should do? And it talks about how Gerard Mayo is probably going to be the next coach of the Patriots. Then it talks about some other things, and then it has this little subheading, quote, definitely check in on Mike Vrabel. Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal writes, a lot of people around the NFL took note of the quote from Vrabel when he was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. And we remember it. He got mad at me. We'll touch on that some more in a second. Vrabel obviously differed with John Robinson on the trade of A.J. Brown, and that decision ultimately led to Robinson's firing by ownership, not Vrabel, after both Vrabel and Robinson signed dueling 4-year contract extensions. Many believe, Bedard writes, that Vrabel was put in the position of being a strong head coach and wanted the hiring of Ran Carthon as GM. So this idea that Chad Withrow says every time he comes on, and Paul says all the time, Mike Vrabel's in charge. That is incorrect, Greg Bedard writes. That was a shotgun marriage by ownership. NFL sources believe the league had a heavy hand in owner Amy Adams Strunk hiring Carthon, a top minority candidate. Now, you may be upset about that, but the Titans are asking for like $200 million from the league. The Titans were involved in a lawsuit when it came to Ray Horton and, again, the minority coaching situation. So you hire a minority GM. The league says, hey, you should hire a minority GM. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that is what is being alleged here. Okay. Vrabel and Carthon had no previous relationship, and it's believed they don't have much of one now, Bedard writes. There have been issues with Carthon's job performance even back to his 49er days. League sources believe that Vrabel could be looking for a way to force his way out of Tennessee after the season, and the Patriots would be an obvious landing spot, if not the front runner. And then it goes on and on about just some speculation. I'm not saying he should be the guy, Bedard writes. He'd certainly be a better candidate than Mayo, and he definitely needs to explain his offensive and personnel philosophies. His annual OC dance illustrates perfectly the issues of hiring a defensive head coach, which again have been discussed many a time on this program. But the Crafts should be intrigued and on the phone with Adam Strunk after the season. All right. So before we get into what this nugget says, let's start with the number one thing, which is the guy who wrote it. That's Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal. Greg Bedard, I think, has been covering the NFL for 30 years. I know he's been a beat writer in the past covering the Dolphins, the Packers, the Patriots. Then he went to Sports Illustrated, where he wrote for the Monday Morning Quarterback for a while. I do know that he knows Floyd or knew Floyd. And, Bedard is not some schmo, okay? He is well entrenched in Boston and has been entrenched in the NFL before. And because I keep up with Boston media, because I used to work up there, and because I listen to a show that Bedard's on all the time, I would say that my comparison for who Greg Bedard is from a credibility standpoint would be Paul Kaharski, right? Paul's been covering the league for forever. Paul's worked at ESPN covering the entire AFC South. Paul's got a vote in the Hall of Fame. Paul left ESPN just like Bedard left Sports Illustrated and started his own thing. But again, when it comes to knowing what's going on with the Titans or talking to people, Paul's got a pretty good idea for the most part. Now, I disagree with a lot of things that Paul believes, but as far as Paul's reporting, I think Paul is incredibly credible, and I feel the exact same way with Bedard. So now that's out of the way. So this idea that, Greg Bedard's this bad guy, forget about it. Don't even bring that here. Now, here's what's in there. Number one, the Patriots are going to hire Gerard Mayo. Number 2, Vrabel and Ran were a shotgun marriage, which we already knew. Number 3, Vrabel hates working with Ran. Now, that is something that on some days from some people we hear is the case. Fitz came on the show when Ian Rappaport reported that Will Levis was going to be the starting quarterback against the Falcons. Fitz came on the show and is like, there are people in that building that are furious, talking about Vrabel and Carthon. Charles Robinson went on Robbie and Joe the next day and was like, I need to pick my words carefully, but alluded to the same issues. This is not the first time we've heard this. Now, Diana has said, oh, no, that's great. TD has said, oh, no, it's great. But I assume that Vrabel doesn't like working with Ran Carthon. I mean, Vrabel is such an alpha male, like is such a my way or the highway guy with everything, that the idea of working with somebody who, again, regardless of what you think of Ran, and I don't think very much of him, but regardless of what you think, if you don't do things Vrabel's way, he's probably not going to like you. Now, if you're lazy or if you're bad at your job, he's absolutely not going to like you, which is why he likes a guy like Aaron Brewer, because he works so hard and he tries so hard and he's such a good soldier and does things the Vrabel way. But I don't think Ran does things the Vrabel way. So, again, the report is Vrabel hates working with Ran. I've kind of always assumed that. Another thing from the report is that Vrabel wants out, which we have speculated. Again, some of his actions, the Patriots, what he said at the Hall of Fame induction, the fact that he got so mad at me personally about just asking the question about what he said at the Hall of Fame induction. And then the fifth thing, that Ran was forced on the Titans by the NFL as a minority candidate. So again, Patriots are going to hire Gerard Mayo, whatever. I'm not sure I care about that. Vrabel and Ran were a shotgun marriage. We know. And I have told you guys, now I had a little bit of waffling here, with Paul saying, no, Vrabel runs the Titans. But outside of that, 3-week, lapse in judgment on my part where I let Paul convince me of something that is just not the case. I told you when they hired him and nobody would say who was in charge. I'm like, there is nobody in charge. The owner literally hired him and said, you two are going to work together and you're going to figure it out. And they said, yes, ma'am. And that almost never works with anything, but it's certainly not going to work here with Vrabel. Vrabel hates working with Ran. Vrabel wants out, and that Ran was forced on the Titans by the NFL as a minority candidate. Holy crap. Now, let me just say this before I utter another word. I believe all of it. I believe all of it. And I'm not telling you that I believe it beyond the shadow of a doubt, because there's no way to know that, right? There's no way to know what happened in San Francisco or what didn't happen in San Francisco or anything like that. But just what I've seen, what I've heard, I buy it. And I buy it because I never believed, other than that lapse in judgment about, Paul saying that Vrabel runs the Titans, I never believed that she gave one guy more power than the other. And I also believe it because I think it's been pretty obvious that this shotgun marriage is incompetent. And it's led to a bunch of incompetent decisions. And we've been over them. The decision to draft a guard at 11 overall, I think that is the perfect example of why this relationship's not going to work. Because if one guy was in charge, they could say, you know what? I know we've got Skoronski ranked higher on our board than Zay Flowers, but I love Zay Flowers. So what we're going to do is we're going to draft the guy I love. Instead, when you've got to collaborate, you're sitting there and it's like, I want Zay Flowers and you want Broderick Jones, but I don't want Broderick Jones and you don't want Zay Flowers. So what's the board tell us we have to do? Well, Skoronski's the top-ranked player, so I guess we'll draft him. And here's the other thing why I believe this particular piece. Vrabel was in Boston. You had the bye week. You went to London. Vrabel goes to New England. What is the first thing that happened when Vrabel got back from Boston? He immediately got mad about the Ian Rappaport report. The first practice back, Wednesday morning, Ian Rappaport reports, even though Vrabel said he's going to play both quarterbacks, Levis is going to be the primary quarterback. Teresa Walker, first question, asks Vrabel about Levis, and Vrabel immediately says, I didn't say that, and my head popped up like, holy crap. Fitz comes on that day and says people there are furious about that. And that was right when he came back from Boston. And then as soon as that became a thing, it became a thing on this show, it became a thing on the morning show, it became a thing about Vrabel and Ran. And I can just tell you right now, I know it became a thing in that building. I know it. I'm not speculating this. I know it became a problem in that building, how much people were talking about a potential feud between the two. Then immediately it starts coming out that those two love each other and those reports aren't true. And Diana's going on Robbie and Joe and saying Mike Vrabel believes in Ran Carthon, and all of a sudden, it became like the Barney theme song between Vrabel and Ran Carthon. And so I'm just going to tell you, everything in that Greg Bedard piece, I buy. I buy. Look at the candidates that the Titans interviewed for the GM spot. The two internal guys, and then everybody else. How is Amy Adams Strunk know what's the connection here to Vrabel? None. And just Vrabel's actions and my observing of Ran for a year and my knowledge of Vrabel's personality and what I think about Ran as a GM, to me, it all tracks. It all tracks. So I buy it. And you can choose to not believe it. And again, we're going to have Greg Bedard on here, and I'm going to ask him questions. Like, I'm going to ask Greg Bedard, when he comes on the program, where did you get this idea about Ran had problems in San Francisco? Because I've never heard that. But as far as, do I trust the source? Yes. Does it add up in my mind? Yes. So you can say whatever you want about this piece, but I'm just telling you right now, I believe it. And I believe that if working with Ran Carthon, a guy Vrabel didn't know, probably doesn't do things Vrabel's way, if this is such a problem right now, Vrabel will find a way out of here, one way or another. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll get your reaction on that, 615-737-1025. And here's the second thing. If Vrabel does, in fact, hate working with Ran Carthon, which I believe that he does, if he does, there is another thing that happened over the weekend that is totally in play. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. What do you make about your school, The Ohio State University, losing yesterday to Michigan? And now there's a lot of talk about Ryan Day can beat every other team in the country, but he cannot beat Michigan, which you know is unacceptable there. And the name that keeps popping up is Vrabel's.
That's a scary scenario. I mean, because if Ryan Day has a possibility of getting fired for losing one game and Mark Vrabel's name keeps coming up, that means there's some smoke somewhere. And if there's some smoke somewhere, there's a fire. So even though there's speculation and people don't actually know, but if his name keeps coming up with this or the Patriots or whatever, then there's something there. But at the end of the day, it all depends on these 3 and 4 games. And if the Tennessee Titans lose these 3 or 4 games and it gets so bad in the organization, you don't think that he might want to go back to Ohio State or go to the Patriots because it's so intolerable in that situation. So we just got to sit back like days of our lives, like watching a story, and just sit back and watch what happens.
As an Ohio State fan, do you want Vrabel to be the coach? You guys were teammates at Ohio State.
Which part? Here at the Titans or Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Can we go to commercial break?
Chris right there. So his former teammate Vrabel is like, would you want him to coach Ohio State? Yeah, let's go to commercial break. So Ohio State loses to Michigan. You all know that. Everybody's mad about Ryan Day. You all know that. Joe wrote that column last year about Ohio State should give up everything for Vrabel. And somehow that turned into everybody thinking that Vrabel was going to Ohio State. It was wild when Joe put that out there. But then everybody said, well, Vrabel, he wouldn't want to go to college. And it's not about that anymore. Because if the Bedard report is true, that Vrabel hates working with Ran Carthon, and again, you can believe whatever you want to believe. I believe that it's true. If Vrabel hates working with Ran Carthon, the discussion is not now, would Mike Vrabel really want to leave the NFL for college? The discussion is this. If Vrabel hates Ran Carthon, it's not because of Ran's personality, or it's because Vrabel thinks that Ran's getting in the way of the team being successful. Now, whether or not that's Vrabel's own arrogance that's the issue here, that's a different discussion for a different day. But if Vrabel hates him, it's because Vrabel thinks that he's the problem, not the solution. And so I can totally see that. So if Vrabel's the coach of a team that is one of the worst in the NFL, and I think yesterday's win cements that you're one of the worst teams in the NFL, the way that you played against that horrible Panther team. If Vrabel thinks that he's stuck with this terrible franchise with incredibly impulsive ownership, with a general manager that he thinks is in the way or who isn't any good or whatever it may be, or as I've said, I think it's incompetent, this shotgun marriage they have, and I think a lot of their decisions have been incompetent because of it. If he feels that way, why would he stay where he's going to get fired when he could go to Ohio State? And again, we don't know if Ohio State would want him, but he could go to Ohio State and be the king and not have to answer to anybody but the AD and the board and make $10 million a year on a 6-year contract. Vrabel signed, and Bedard reported it, a 4-year contract extension, which means last year was year 1, this year is year 2, next year is year 3. Vrabel is very much entering the fireable territory between the record, the fact that Carthon's brand new, the fact that he's kind of an a-hole, talking about Vrabel, all of those things put him in position to be fired. He's on the hot seat right now. Like, when I ask a question like, should Vrabel be on the hot seat? And people debate it, and some people say yes, and some people say no. That means yes. The hot seat doesn't mean fired. Frank Reich is fired. Vrabel's on the hot seat. So he goes from on the hot seat here, where there may not be a path forward if he's got to go through Ran, and he doesn't trust Ran, believe in Ran, like Ran, respect Ran. Or he can go to Ohio State for $10 million a year on a 6-year contract. And see, the difference between Ohio State and any NFL job is that the Titans cannot stop him from going to Ohio State. The Titans can stop him from going to the Jets. They can stop him from going to the Chargers. They can stop him from going to the Patriots, the Raiders, whomever. They can't stop him from going to work at McDonald's. And they can't stop him from going to work at Ohio State. So I would say you guys ask me, what, Vrabel, would he really want to coach college? I don't think it's would he want to coach college, period. I think it's would he want to coach at Ohio State on a 6-year contract for $10 million a year over what he's doing now, which is probably not $10 million a year, not a 6-year contract, and with crazy ownership that fired a general manager in the middle of the season when you were in first place to reportedly hiring a general manager because the league wanted you to hire a minority candidate. That is not a recipe for success, and Vrabel knows it. And just like with Harbaugh, you can leave the NFL, go to college, have success in college, and then go back to the NFL. So I would certainly not rule out Ohio State. And I have some sympathy for Ryan Day because even though I don't think he's a great coach, I do think they got cheated last year with the whole Connor Stallions and the Stein stealing and everything else. I mean, they won by 3 touchdowns in Columbus. And then we saw what C.J. Stroud did to Georgia. So I have some sympathy for Ryan Day. But I don't know if you've seen how the Texas A&M search went, but there's really no more home run candidates out there anymore. Ohio State being able to get Vrabel might be the only thing that they could believe themselves is an upgrade at coach, unless they could get Urban Meyer back. So I wouldn't rule it out. Your phones are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. Adam in Portland has been hanging on patiently. Go ahead, Adam.
I think it's weird too, dude. All right, number one, whoever asked press conference this morning, asked the questions, they did an awful job. They didn't ask any questions we wanted to hear anything about. I was sitting there waiting for him to address this, and I was going to see how he was going to answer it, because I feel like if I were to ask you, hey, I heard a report that you're going to move to Michigan and run a used car lot, you would look at me and go, no, that's stupid. Why would I do that? You would address it immediately, right? If it was false, you would say it's false. If you had something to hide, you would baffle her and, just not tell me the truth. You would not give me a straight answer. So if it's something so wacky, then he could have addressed it easily, I think. So I think, number one, the media failed to ask that question, and that's, it's not on Vrabel to come out and give information if you don't ask, but also I think they could have cleared it up there.
So you think that the media is at fault here?
100%. Yeah, I mean, if they're the ones if the media puts out a report, and we all heard the report, then I think at the press conference when he goes to speak again, you should have been like, hey, just tell us about this real quick. He could have told you to shut up, and then you'll know, hey, it could be some smoke.
So, I mean, again, I don't think it's really the importance of this. Thank you for your call, Adam. I don't think the importance of this has anything to do with the media or what would have been asked. Now, the one thing I will say is I never say don't ask a question because he's not going to answer that or he's not going to tell the truth because, again, I can't speak for another man. So I don't know what Vrabel would say. He might come out and say, yeah, that report's true. I don't think he would, but he might. But I don't know. I mean, I didn't expect them to ask it, and they didn't ask it. And I guess I don't have a problem with them not asking. It even if he had said no, it wouldn't have made the story go away. But speaking of Vrabel and his press conferences, there is a nugget in this Bedard story that takes us back to a Vrabel press conference recently. We'll get to that next. And, of course, your phones. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there while I have your attention. By the way, Joe Rexroad is texting me nonsensically right now. I don't even know what he's talking about, but I'm sure we'll discuss that as well. Preds fans, do not miss this Wednesday night Smashville Live at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 o'clock. See your Predator star players up close and personal, autographs and pictures. And this week's guests are Tyson Berry and Ryan O'Reilly. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company.
but I also want you not to take this organization for granted. I've been a lot of places. This is a special place with great leadership, great fans, great direction, great coaching. Enjoy it. It's not like this everywhere. Thank you very much.
I won 6 Super Bowls in 20 years. That's what I was alluding to. You know what I mean? I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's just extremely, you know, a lot of success. And, you know, and I guess just probably having talked to, you know, Bill and, you know, Mr. Kraft and the coaches I know they're on staff, I guess that was just my way of, you know, bringing them good luck on Sunday. No, I mean, just the amount of success that they had there, that was the whole message was just for myself and the former players and everything, just to not take things for granted. Just the because, you know, I got traded myself and went to a team that went 6-10, and it was like, you know, where you're just trying to find ways to win other than knowing that you're going to win when you show up. It was my whole intent of saying that you know, they've had it pretty good there for 20 years, 6 Super Bowls and however many else they went to.
Ooh, Vrabel got mad. Oh, he got mad when I asked him. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. So when you went to New England and you were like, it's not like that everywhere, were you talking about here? And it turned into that word salad plus. Jared, you'll never think like me. Think like an athlete. Think like a man. And I was just saying that because they won the Super Bowl and that's not a big deal or whatever. And I actually forgot that Joe said this until Caroline told me last night. Apparently Rex Road said on the morning show that was a nothing burger, what Vrabel said. Not according to Greg Bedard's piece. Quote, a lot of people around the NFL, not a lot of people on local Nashville talk radio. Quote, a lot of people around the NFL took note of this quote from Vrabel when he was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. Quote, I don't want you to take this organization for granted, Vrabel said. I've been a lot of places. This is a special place with great leadership, great fans, great direction, and great coaching. Enjoy it. It's not like this everywhere. So everybody told me, including you, Ian, because I just asked the question of, should we be reading into those comments? And then they traded Kevin Byard 5 minutes into us talking about that. And so we kind of moved off of it. But you told me, Ian, I was reading too much into it. And you still might be right. But I would argue that from Vrabel's anger when asked about it, combined with the fact that Bedard, again, who's been covering the league for like 30 years, said a lot of people around the NFL took note of that quote. Apparently, even if Vrabel didn't mean anything by it.
He doesn't like when you parse.
Well, I'm not the only one parsing it, apparently. Apparently, a lot of people around the NFL, according to Bedard, are parsing it. Maybe it's because there might be a little something there. Let's go to Kyle, who's up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. What's up, Kyle?
Hey, Jared. I'm sorry, man. I can't go with you on this report. I've got to think they're getting along like TD says, man. Look at that draft class yesterday, the rookie class, what it did. The last 3 years, we haven't got nothing close to that. We had every rookie yesterday contributing well above their head.
What does that have to do with whether or not Vrabel likes Ran Carthon? And I would not argue that every rookie was performing above their head. Skoronski fell down yesterday.
He is a plug-and-play rookie offensive lineman in the NFL, man.
I mean, I don't think Skoronski's all that good, to be honest. That's a different discussion, though, for a different day. Why does that make you think that Vrabel and Carthon are buddies because all of a sudden you like how Levis played yesterday?
Performance, man. All those rookies, that's proof. You said you didn't think he was able to – his performance would be the reason Vrabel didn't like him. Look at the draft class they just brought in. They're all contributing great. The future looks great. The budget looks good for next year. We got the quarterback, man. We're going to have a great first-round draft pick. I mean,
Kyle, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. You're Vrabel, and Ran Carthon brought you Andre Dillard. Do you trust Ran Carthon to spend $100 million for you this offseason?
I partially blame that on Vrabel.
I didn't ask you. First of all, I think we can all agree, right, without having proof of this, that if Mike Vrabel did not make the decision, like that if in Mike Vrabel's world, Mike Vrabel does not blame Mike Vrabel. Agreed?
Yeah, he seems
okay.
arrogant.
So I asked you if you're Vrabel, I think that's Vrabel. No. If you're Vrabel and he brought you Andre Dillard, do you really trust this guy?
You asking me a question like that, no.
Okay, see, that's my point. Yeah. And see, that's the whole point about a guy like Vrabel. Kyle, thank you for your call. That's the whole point of a guy like Vrabel, is that it's not that, and again, this is more like psychoanalysis or whatever, but I feel like I know Vrabel well enough to be able to do this. If Vrabel doesn't trust Ran Carthon, and I don't think he does, and I think not only have I seen enough reports that point me in that direction, I see the way, that Vrabel has said certain things. The backtracking feels way too coordinated. And on top of it, and more importantly, when it comes to Vrabel, there are some other things that I have heard, just behind the scenes that I haven't felt strong enough about to report, and I'm not going to report them. But, I feel pretty confident about them. But when it comes to Vrabel, like him not liking Ran Carthon is not a personal thing, I would assume. It's not like Ran's going to get in the way of my power, and it's not going to be my team, and that's not it. It's that Vrabel is sitting there thinking to himself, I have to trust you, the same guy who may or may not have delivered me Andre Dillard, I don't know. I have to trust you to go spend $100 million to put a football team out there on the field that then I am judged by if they're good or they're bad. And I'm the one who has to get up there, and I have to answer questions from Jared effing Stillman about my offensive line coach and my special teams coordinator, because the one thing I asked you to do, go get me a punt returner, you didn't do. Like, that's kind of the way that Vrabel feels. Also, and this is like different from this report and everything else, it's too early on this draft class, folks. Like, they could be good, but none of them are going to the Pro Bowl this year. And I'm not saying that that's the standard for what makes a good draft class, is whether or not people go to the Pro Bowl as rookies. But that's how you know you've got a great player, is when they go to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. And even then you don't know. Mac Jones went to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. Vince Young went to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. So you don't really know. But again, like Javon Curse, that's when you know off the jump. Chris Johnson, that's when you know off the jump. Like, Peter Skoronski's not that good right now. Now, does he have the potential to get better? Is he coached poorly? All of those things could be the case, and those could be problems. Derek yesterday said one of his big problems is a lack of stability and trust on both sides of Skoronski playing guard. He might be right about that. But right now, Peter Skoronski is not playing well, including when he tripped over his own feet yesterday that kept Derrick Henry from getting a touchdown. But when you're like, oh, no, this draft class is so great, how could Vrabel and Ran be at odds with each other? What? And I don't even think that the draft class is that good. And I think it's way too early to be judging those kind of things anyways. My goodness. Texter into the text line says, now, this is probably hypocritical of me, and this is truly hypocritical, not the hypocritical Joe has been texting me, accusing me of being. But a lot of you guys give me too much credit. A lot of you guys psychoanalyze me like way too much. And like, what bothers me about the Titans, and see, this is the same thing that I think bothers Vrabel about Ran Carthon. What bothers me about the Titans is not Vrabel bitching at me in the press conferences. I don't care about that. Like, that doesn't bother me. If anything, those things are good for the radio show, right? Because it's like, oh, Vrabel and Jared got into it. I got to hear what Jared has to say about it. But I'm also not a wrestling character, so I don't go out of my way to do those things. I I have questions I want answers to. But what bothers me about the Titans is not about what they say about me or what they say to me. What bothers me about the Titans is how bad the football team is. Like when I'm watching the game yesterday and I am getting legitimately depressed about the fact that that horrible Carolina Panther team that might be one of the worst teams I have ever seen is out there on the field and they are within legitimate striking distance of you because you can't score any points in the second half. That's what bothers me. What bothers me about the Titans is you guys waxing poetically about a guard that you took in the first round, 11th overall, who's not even that good, when I watch Zay Flowers go out there for the Ravens and like a freaking video game, just move right all over the field and run right into the end zone for a touchdown. And I'm like, why can't you have that guy? That's what bothers me. You guys think I care about what Vrabel thinks about me. I don't care what any of these people think about me because they're going to be gone 3 or 4 years anyways, and I'll still be right here. And it doesn't change. I liked Mike Mularkey, and he got fired. He's not here anymore. I liked Peter Laviolette, and he got fired. He's not here anymore. I hated John Hynes, and he's not here anymore. These guys are all going to be gone. It doesn't bother me one iota, but what bothers me is that the football team stinks. That's what bothers me. What bothers me is that I don't trust the GM, I don't trust the coach, and I certainly don't trust the commission, this collaboration to get it right when you're going to have the 8th pick in the draft and all this money to go spend, and they're going to sign me some Andre Dillards and Aaron Brewers. That's what bothers me. It doesn't bother me that Vrabel doesn't like me. Vrabel probably hasn't liked me for a long time. That's okay. I like him. I don't care. I'm not happy with the way he's coaching. But as far as like that press conference is the only God, oh my goodness gracious. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. We'll get back to your phones. 1025-1063 the game. Ohio State lost again to Michigan yesterday, their third straight under Ryan Day. Now, Ryan Day happens to beat everybody except for Michigan, and a lot of people there are unhappy about that. Do you think there could be any chance that Ohio State could make a move on Vrabel, or that he would have any interest in perhaps taking the Ohio State job?
You know, Jerry, you're going to die on this hill. I noticed that. I mean, this is a hill you are not going to come off of. Look, let me make it as plain as simple. Mike Vrabel is not going anywhere. Period.
Okay. Ian, put TD down on the guarantee list. That sounds like a guarantee, right?
Pretty close.
Put TD down on the guarantee list that Vrabel will be back next year. He might be. I don't know. I tell you, I don't have a clue. Like, I don't know, like, which, with this ownership, it's like, which way is the wind blowing today? And it really bums me out because I used to really feel like the ownership here, and I still like them. Like I do. I don't know them that well, but I know them well enough. And I think they're good people, and that does matter to me. But, like, the way they treated Floyd at the end of his life was always really, really important to me. And I don't forget about that. But at the same time, like, the firing of Robinson, the hiring of a guy who has no affiliation to, like, when they fired Robinson, I thought that this meant that there was going to be, this was going to be Mike Vrabel's team, period, and that the GM was going to be like Brent Veach of the Chiefs, who answers to Andy Reid. And I don't like that because Vrabel, in my opinion, hasn't earned it and doesn't have the experience for that. But no, they did something even stupider. They went out and got somebody who Vrabel doesn't know, who has a personality clash with Vrabel for one reason or another. And I'm not a huge Ran Carthon fan. I'm not a huge Vrabel fan. As I said last week, at the end of the year, I would be preparing, if things continue in this path, I would be prepared to clean house at the end of the year, just so that there's no more, well, he did this, or it's his fault here, or nope. You're both gone. We're starting from scratch, and we're going to do this the right way. And a lot of people take umbrage with that, but to me, that is like just amputating the situation, and I'm okay with it. But the idea that they're both going to be back with all the smoke and the drama and everything, there's no way they can, right? There's no way all of this is bullcrap. Charles Robinson is a very reputable NFL reporter. Greg Bedard is a very reputable NFL reporter. These are not nobodies. Even Fitz, who came on the show, you guys know Fitz. He's not a bomb thrower. He's not somebody that's just going to say it for attention. He's not going to do any of that. He comes on and is like, oh, yeah, I'm here, and there's big problems over there. There's no way this is going to be the same. That I have a hard time with. Texter says, now the Titans have dropped to the 10th pick. They should have traded Tannehill and anyone else they won't re-sign on an expiring contract so that they could lose as many games as possible because this is a full rebuild. I do not believe in losing on purpose with a young quarterback. Because regardless of whether or not it's the young quarterback's fault, the young quarterback is going to get blamed. Case in point, the young quarterback you watched yesterday. Now, I don't think Bryce Young's perfect. I told you I would not have drafted Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick. I would have drafted Anthony Richardson. But Bryce Young has no chance for success. With that crazy owner, with no receivers, except for an old Adam Thielen, no tight ends, no offensive line, he has no chance. They just fired the coach. He has no chance for success. None. Unless he's truly Peyton Manning. And I don't think he is. So, again, like, if the quarterback wins, then everybody would be happy. And everybody would think he's great. And then that would build his confidence. Just like the second quarterback taken in the draft. And I know it's easy to say now, well, Bryce Young's too small. And C.J. Stroud is just perfect. But I don't think that's what most draft people thought at the time. So that's why I think it's important to not lose on purpose. That being said, I don't know how much more winning you're going to do if that's the best effort you can give against Carolina, who is horrible. I mean, just horrendous, which they were yesterday. One texter into the text line says, Jared, why do you make this such a big deal and such a big story? This is another episode of The New Housewives with Jared Stillman. Here's what I would say to that when it comes to the Titans and the brass and everything else. Do you think all these people are lying? Greg Bedard is going to be on this show in 40 minutes. The guy who wrote this. And we will ask him. You know, again, the claim about Ran Carthon's job performance back to his 49er days. I haven't heard that. Where does that come from? We will ask. But do you really think that with this much smoke, there's not just a little bit of a fire? Do you really think it's all nothing? Yeah, I remember for years, and I kind of blame the local media here, and I don't know if it's fair or unfair, but most of these stories about the tension between Ran and Mike haven't come from the local, you know, they haven't come from the local media or whatever it might be, for me. But I used to always, be jealous in Boston where they always had a story of Bill thinks this, Tom wants that, Kraft says this, and I'm like, we don't get that on the radio here. You know, we got boring John Robinson and boring Mike Vrabel, and, you know, it's all right, what do we think about your offensive line against their defensive line? And I'm like, God, I just am so jealous. I wish that they had that. And now they have it, and because I'm a fan of the Titans, I don't like it very much. I liked it back when, you know, the team was good, and we worried about those things. Dan is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. Thank you. What's up, Dan?
Hey, brother, what's going on? Hey, man, you got to get away from this Vrabel to Ohio State nonsense. Vrabel wants nothing to do with the college game, man. The college game is a 365, 24/7. They get like one week vacation a year. He's made it known he wants nothing to do with the college game. Now, I do believe you need to worry about him going to New England. I mean, he's going to get carte blanche control if he wants to go there. He knows Kraft's going to give him what he wants, and he's going to
except that that's not true. Like
that?
All the reporting out of New England, including this Bedard piece, is that the Patriots are going to hire Gerard Mayo to be the next coach.
Well, then you don't need to worry about Vrabel going to New England, but you don't need to worry about him going to Ohio State either.
I mean, I don't know if Ohio State wants him, and I have no idea. Yeah. Thank you for your call, Dan. I have no idea if Vrabel wants Ian, was that who I think it was? Okay. I have no idea, you know, if Vrabel wants to go to college or not. I'm sure he probably doesn't. But again, it's not, well, why would you want to go to college? It's college is offering a 6-year deal at $10 million a year, and you don't have to work with a guy that reportedly you don't like working with. And the pros, where you sit right now, if you lose next year, you're fired. Which one would you pick? Chris is up next on Vrabel. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Jared, I just wanted to let you know, man, first of all, for a long time, I've listened to your radio show. And for a long time, I disagreed with a lot of your opinions. But as the days and years and weeks and months have gone on, I've learned to appreciate what you say even more, because I have learned that there are a lot of times you are right when I did not think you were going to be right.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm going to get that out of the way. That being said, I also agree, especially with your idea of we should not tank with Will Levis playing ball. Will Levis has looked really good to me. I know that you're a big Anthony Richardson fan, and I would have thought the same thing before the year. I'm big on Levis right now, and I guess it's easy to get big on Levis because we're Titans fans and we're grasping for straws, right? But I think Levis is going to be pretty good. I'm going to just put the phone down. Let's listen to you from now on. You have a good day, sir.
Okay. Thank you for your call, Chris. I'm glad you bring up Levis because I do want to get to Levis because there is something bad that Levis did yesterday. But then the way that he followed it up was very, very good, at least to me. I noticed it right away. I found it to be a total breath of fresh air and incredibly encouraging. And it has nothing to do with what he did on the field. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Joe, by the way, points out, apparently Vrabel has never said that he's not interested in going back to college. I'm going to trust Joe on that one, I guess. I don't know. Again, Nick Saban said he was never going to go to Alabama when he was the coach of the Dolphins. So, make of that what you will. I would just say this. I love this job, right? I get to talk about the teams that I cover on a daily basis that I grew up rooting for, the Titans, the Predators. My favorite thing about the job, and I totally mean this, is that when I am angry about the team being bad, I can literally get off my chest what makes me mad, and I know that they hear it. They might not agree with it. They might not like it, but I know that my anger is being heard. But if I don't want to go to Philadelphia and complain about the Eagles and the Phillies. But if it was 6 years and I felt like I was about to be shoved out here, that would change how I think. And I think right now, Vrabel's on the hot seat, and if he goes to Ohio State, he gets a 6-year contract. That, to me, that's easy. Tomorrow's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the game tomorrow, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Joe tomorrow at 8:45. Preds Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal will join us in less than 30 minutes, and we will ask him again, Vrabel and Ran Carthon, what's he hearing there? Where's he hearing? How's he hearing? All of that we will get into. Now, I don't know. There is one thing from yesterday's game that absolutely stood out to me. I didn't go to yesterday's game. I wasn't interested in going to yesterday's game. It was too cold outside. It was too gross outside. It was a holiday weekend. I was kind of tired anyways. But the real reason why I didn't go to the game yesterday is twofold. Number one, it was trash football. Go out to the game. It's like an all-day thing, and it's just exhausting. And to do it, to go sit in the cold to watch those two teams play, ugh. And the second thing is that, in order to go, you got to, ask people who wants to go and then coordinate with them and all the effort it is. And, again, if it's a good game, if it's something like that, I don't have a problem with that. And the people that are going usually don't have a problem with it either. But on a holiday weekend against the Carolina Panthers, I think if I had asked around, hey, who wants to go to the game? There would have been a lot of, my grandma is in town, and I don't know if I can what. Hey, Ian, if I had asked you if you wanted to go to the game yesterday, would you have wanted to go to the game?
Wouldn't have been able to make that one, bro.
Oh, they see that? There you go. So I watched the game at home, and I was depressed because both teams were so bad, including the team I root for. But I was really bothered by the performance of the quarterback because I didn't think Will Levis was very good yesterday. I thought that first touchdown drive they had, I thought he was excellent. I thought the throw to Chig was beautiful, and I thought it was a well-orchestrated drive. He fit the ball into tight windows. He was on time with his throws. He had touch when he needed it. I thought it was a great drive. And then after that, there were some sprinkled in good throws here and there, but it was a lot of bad. Throws a hospital ball for Tajay Spears, hits DeAndre, and then a couple of plays later has a 35-yard gain that puts you in field goal range, and he throws it 2 yards behind DeAndre. It's like, what is the matter with you? This is the worst performance he's had as quarterback of the Titans, and I didn't like it. But then after the game was over, I listened to the press conferences. Listened to Vrabel, listened to Will Levis. I want to hear what they have to say every time they play. As soon as the game's over, especially the road games, especially when they lose. I'm like, all right, let's hear what this press conference, let's hear what they have to say. And I was really impressed with Will Levis yesterday. There was a report that came out. I don't remember who had it because I remember Caroline told me about it. Apparently, an unnamed NFL team said when they met with Will Levis at the Combine, they were turned off because they had a bunch of snacks in the meeting rooms that they were in, and Will Levis took a bag of chips and walked out, and it rubbed people in the room the wrong way because it was like he didn't even ask for those chips. And I'm not going to tell you that that's not nothing, because I will say that, if somebody, wants something and asks for it, and at least I can say no. But if you just take and don't ask, it's almost like I feel offended by the lack of respect that you have for not asking. But I remember that, and I do think that there were some of those things along the way that hurt Levis. But I haven't really seen that since Levis has been quarterback of the Titans. So yesterday, I thought Levis was terrible. I'm sure if you want to have an excuse for him, you probably do. But what I was refreshed by was the fact that after the game was over, even though they won the game, he didn't throw anybody under the bus, but he did take the blame for his performance. Here is just a collection of some of the things Will Levis said yesterday that really impressed me.
We did better probably in the first half, but in the second half, just examples of us just shooting ourselves in the foot, and I need to do a better job of just operating the offense and putting us in an easier spot so that we're not, setting ourselves back. So a couple third downs, just a couple opportunities for us to extend drives, which I wasn't able to do for us today, but just got to just key in on those moments and make sure that we can operate in those situations. We had a cadence issue on the last drive that put us in a bad spot, which I could have helped us by just getting things going a little faster. And
surprised the head coach went for a fourth and low from the 30 and like plays like that. Does that help kind of get the juice going?
I was so glad we did because, we had messed up and I had done something that could have put us in a better spot if I hadn't on the third down, or on the second down, or the third down before the penalty. And then to get that close on that play, that's obviously a risky situation, but I'm for it, obviously. Yeah, I mean, looking back, for me, I think this was the first game where I had more than a couple, at least location issues in terms of just accuracy, which, I'm just got to keep working and know that I can make those throws. But a couple third down opportunities where I had someone and I just missed the throw. And then maybe one or two where I could have gone somewhere else with the ball.
I don't disagree with a single thing he said, but it was incredibly refreshing to hear. I read Tim Grover's books. He's Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade's trainer, and he talks about the difference between a cooler, a closer, and a cleaner. And a cooler, a closer, yeah, they're good at the end of the game, but you got to get them there. And a cleaner, that's Michael, that's Kobe, that's Derrick Henry, is a cleaner. And one of the things that he points out is that a cooler always tries to make excuses for their mistakes. Oh, it's not my fault that happened. It's not that I shouldn't have. A closer will say things didn't go well, but won't really explain. A cleaner will put his hand in the air and say, I screwed up, and move on. And that's what Levis did yesterday. It's funny because if I were to just say, Levis was awful yesterday, and I really was not happy with Levis's performance. I thought it was a step back from everything that we had seen so far this year. But if he had not said that, I think there would have been a lot of you out there that would have made excuses for him, that would have said, what do you expect him to do, Jared, with this offensive line in front of him? What do you expect with these receivers? What do you? Well, he expects better of himself, too. And I felt like that was genuine of him up there, of him taking the blame. And the one thing I'll say about accountability, because accountability is very important to me. In fact, when we talk about all this Vrabel and Ran Carthon stuff, one of the things that probably bothers me the most about Ran Carthon is I have felt since he's become the general manager a complete and total lack of transparency and accountability in the position. But the thing about accountability at that position, being the quarterback, is that you can't hold other people accountable if you won't be accountable yourself. There's a story Matt Castle tells when he was the backup in New England, that he motioned a guy over and they were running a play and then he's supposed to motion him back or something like that. Has nothing to do with the play. Castle forgets to motion the guy back over. They snap the ball. Castle throws the ball on the other side of the field. It's a big completion. Everybody's high-fiving. He walks over, and Brady just lights him up. And he says to Tom Brady, he goes, Tommy, we completed the pass. That motion on the back end of the play didn't even mean anything anyways. And Brady said, how can you hold everybody else accountable if you can't hold yourself accountable? And so knowing how important that position is, knowing how every little detail is important at that position. When I saw Will Levis play the game that he played yesterday that I wasn't thrilled with, that I certainly knew wasn't his best, I found it to be incredibly encouraging that after the game was over, he got up there at the podium unprompted. Those questions, they won the game. Those questions weren't, Will, why'd you suck so bad today? But he got up there to the podium, hand in the air, and said, I screwed up. And he told you how he did it too. This was my worst day of ball placement. I screwed up on the cadence. I'm glad Vrabel went for it on fourth down because I put us in that position. You didn't hear him say a single thing bad about anybody else on the team. But as far as holding himself accountable, he did that yesterday to the media. And I think that is incredibly encouraging. The reason why teams miss at that position is because they don't properly evaluate what's up here in the head and what's right here in the heart. We all know Levis has a bazooka. We all know he's huge. We all know that he can move a little bit, although he's not moving as much as I'd like him to. Maybe he's hurt. I don't know. But there's just not enough time in the offseason and in the combine and in everything else to really, truly know what a guy has up here and up there until you get to see it on a daily basis. There are indicators, there are context clues, there's everything else. And there were a lot of people that had questions about Will Levis. But just by him getting up there and taking responsibility and admitting reality, which was he didn't play very well, and the number one cause or the number one way to fix a problem, you have to admit the problem first, was really encouraging. It's like Bill Polian said when he interviewed Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf at the Combine. And again, when they were interviewing those guys, I mean, that Colts room, it was 50-50 Manning Leaf. Manning comes up to Polian and says, I'll be there. If you draft me number one, I'll be there the next day. They said, well, Peyton, according to the league rules, you can't be there the next day. You got to wait through the weekend or something. Peyton said, oh, that's great. You figure it out. I'll be there the next day. Polian asked Ryan Leaf, what are you going to do if we draft you number one? I'm going to go party at Vegas first. Got it. With Levis, again, it's small. And it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be great or anything like that, but it's encouraging. 615-737-1025. A lot of you guys want to weigh in on all of that. 615-737-1025, so we will. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They are the best. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and I love this one every year, especially how they take care of the kids, because they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Hiller wants to make sure every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year, so they're donating $50 in toys to Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase, and giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. That's right. And I love the fact, again, the Toys for Tots thing I think is fabulous. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today at happyhiller.com.
A win is a win, and talk about how hard winning in this league is, and that's one where it kind of feels like you didn't, but we got it, and we got to keep building on it and keep rolling from there. I mean, it's the first time in a while I feel like we got to win, so it's a good feeling.
So I'm disappointed in Will Levis's performance, and it's clear that Will Levis is disappointed in his performance, which I like. He's up there, he's talking about, hey, I guess a win's a win. Boy, he smacks his lips a lot just like that. It drives me nuts when it's just like, Ian, ask me a question.
How's your day going today?
It's just been really great. We got Greg Bedard from the Boston Sports Journal who wrote that piece about Vrabel and Ran coming on in a little bit. And, God, it drives me nuts. I'm probably the only person in the world that goes crazy over that, but I guess I do. One thing that I don't want to say it bothered me. Bothered is a stretch, but maybe I was just hoping for a little bit more out of Levis from one angle of this was, there's really 4 teams that truly passed on Levis, right? Like, I know the league passed on him, but there's really, truly 4. 6 if you want to count the Raiders and Tampa Bay. But it's unquestioned that Carolina passed on him, Houston passed on him, Indianapolis passed on him, Atlanta passed on him. And then again, if you want to throw the Raiders in there, I think you can. If you want to throw Tampa Bay in there, I think you can. And so this was he really put it to the Falcons, which I liked. Tampa, again, did they pass on him? Were they committed to Baker the whole time? Who knows? But Carolina passed on him. And he was asked about that last week, and here's what he said about the Panthers. Now, he'll get another shot because Indy is this week, but here's what he said about kind of his experience throughout the draft process with the Panthers.
How closely did you get to know Carolina's staff in the pre-draft seconds?
Pretty close, yeah. I mean, I had a dinner with them, and then I had a top 30 visit with them, and just had a decent connection with them. I know that they did the same process with the 3 or 4 quarterbacks or whoever they brought in, but they were very professional about all of them, and I thought that they were a well-run organization.
Are you motivated by teams that maybe didn't pick you? I know a lot of times the guys will get motivated by this team didn't pick me, this team didn't pick me. There were some quarterbacks picked ahead of you. Does that serve as motivation, or you just kind of go about doing it?
Yeah, I don't think I'm looking at a specific team like, dang, like screw these guys. Like I'm really trying to beat up on them, But no, it's just internal motivation, just as a whole, just how that whole process went for me that was able to just push me forward and just work the way I have like since I got here.
See, I kind of wished it was the other way around. Like I kind of wish like it was like, hey, they're on my list, right? Like the great competitors, this, they metabolize the smallest diss and turn it into fuel for greatness. And obviously the number one example of that is Michael Jordan. But it's like with Levis, like, hey, Carolina chose somebody else over you. Houston chose somebody else over you. Indy chose somebody else over you. Atlanta chose to stay with Desmond Ridder over you. And I just kind of wish he had a little, Michael Jordan in him that was like, oh, I'll show you. I'll show you. Dan Marino had that in his own division where Tony Eason was drafted by the Patriots. Ken O'Brien was drafted by the New York Jets. And now Jim Kelly was drafted by the Bills, and Jim Kelly was really, really good. But, again, Marino had that inside of him. That was a big deal to Marino. And, again, it's not the, end of the story here that Levis didn't go out to the Panthers and shove it right in their behinds for drafting somebody else instead of him. But I just maybe wish that it would have a little bit. Maybe, it's more personal with the Colts, who seem to really use him to try to hide their lust for Anthony Richardson. Maybe it's more with the Texans. I don't know. And maybe that'll be a good thing that he goes out there in his career and dominates those teams because I'm going to show you. But he didn't have that yesterday, and I just kind of wish he would. And again, it's not the end of the world that he didn't, but I just kind of wish he would a little bit. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, you are such a baby, says the texter. I go to games by myself, and it's not my job to report on them. First of all of us can watch the games on TV. It doesn't make that much of a difference. Joe was at the game and was reporting the game. Robbie watched it on TV. When you listen to Robbie and Joe, can you really tell that Robbie wasn't at the game or didn't watch it on TV? So I think that that's a little overblown. Secondly, when it comes to going to the game, if I feel like the team deserves my support, I will be there. In 2017, my aunt passed away, and the funeral was on a Wednesday. And the Titans were playing Jacksonville, win, and you're in. And the temperature was scheduled to be like 1 degree. I mean, it was brutally cold. Nobody wanted to go to the game. And I went to that Jacksonville game by myself because I felt like the team playing for a shot to the play at the playoffs where they hadn't, this was 2017, they hadn't been to the playoffs since 2008. I felt like they had earned my support. So I was there. When it was 1 degree last year on Christmas Eve against Houston after they had fired their GM and they were playing Malik at quarterback, I'm going to watch a game on TV. That's how I felt about yesterday's game. It's a holiday weekend. It's cold. It's rainy. You suck. They suck. I don't need to waste my time going to the game. This Sunday against the Colts, I'll be going to the game. Not being a baby. It's just if I don't feel like the team's earned the support, I don't feel like I owe it to anybody to go. And I certainly do not owe it to watch that of what we saw this past week. Texter says, I'll say this for Levis. No matter how bad I feel about past or current places, it's never a good look to bash them to give personal reasons for leaving. I guess. I mean, I'm not saying that Levis has to get up there to the podium and say, yeah, I want to shove it up Carolina. I was talking more so with how he played, right? Like Tannehill didn't really say anything about the Dolphins when he played them. But then Tannehill, when they were putting it on him, A.J. Brown told everybody that Tannehill went in the huddle and was like, let's hang it on the scoreboard. That's what I'm talking about. Greg Bedard, the Boston Sports Journal, his report basically says Vrabel wants out. Vrabel and Carthon don't get along. Vrabel and Carthon, again, the quote here is just amazing to me, which is that NFL sources believe the league had a heavy hand in Amy Adams Strunk hiring Carthon, a top minority candidate. Vrabel and Carthon had no previous relationship, and it's believed they don't have much of one now. Greg Bedard will join us. We will, again, ask where he's heard some of this, where it's coming from. The Patriots, Vrabel will do that next here on Stillman and Company. Speaking of it being cold outside, and I think most of you have noticed, it got cold. White Bison is your local coffee shop. Warm up with White Bison. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. And I mean, premium. Grab a cup of cheer at White Bison. 3 new holiday drinks, a mint mocha frappe, a holiday cookie iced latte, and a ginger snap latte. And buy a $20 gift card for someone special and get $5 for yourself. Boy, that's great right there. You go in there, buy stuff for the whole office, buy them all White Bison, then you'll have a lot of free White Bison. Needing something a little different? Switch it up with a thoughtfully considered selection of refreshing tea or smoothies that are perfect for any weather, including the really, really cold weather we have right now, or what may be next week really, really warm. I don't know. You guys know how Nashville is in the winter. Order ahead and get rewards and download the app to order ahead to earn those rewards and get 1 free coffee every time you buy 7 part of White Bison's rewards. Again, buy 7, get 1 free. That's White Bison, your local coffee shop.
Well, I'll just, sort of give you a background. I mean, look, obviously this has, some sort of Titans ramifications, but it's not on my mind. I mean, we're at the point with the Patriots and Bill Belichick's tenure where we're all trying to figure out what's next. And, a lot of that for me, now that it's become clear, and I did a lot of this work in the past, couple weeks, anticipating that they get to a point where it's now secure after the loss to the Giants that they will be finishing with a losing season, 3 out of the last 4 seasons. And so the likelihood of some sort of divorce or parting of the ways between the Krafts and Belichick becomes more likely. And, so my job is to, look down the line and figure out like what options there are. So, pretty much I've been, going through my vast contacts in the league, but primarily, Patriots related, Patriots land, people who have been here, who are here, that sort of thing to, take the pulse on, what's next. How do they feel about certain people? How do they feel about Gerard Mayo? And so the Vrabel question is just sort of, I've asked that of everybody. Like, do you think there's any sort of, possibility? I was surprised by the response that, a majority of them think it's a possibility. How real? I don't have any idea. But, really I was trying to ascertain, like, is this even possible? Is it not possible? And the answer I got back was, it is possible. And the reason is because of the alignment in Tennessee between, Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel. And so, that's sort of where that all started. And, like I said, I was surprised that it was brought to me as more of a possibility than anything else. And, we'll have to see what happens. How likely it is, I'm not really sure. I think there's a lot of possibilities, when you're having a season like the Titans are and also the Patriots are. A lot of people start to, keep options open to make sure they have maximum leverage. So, how much of this is, just scuttlebutt amongst Patriots people, I'm not sure. But I will say Vrabel's appearance at the Hall of Fame induction piqued a lot of interest among Patriots people. And there was a lot of things that, and I don't have specifics, but generally what I was told is like, there were a lot of things, a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes as far as, people relating well and getting along well, because there was a long time where the relationship between Vrabel and the Krafts was extremely icy. I mean, he basically made a comment about Patriot Place and how the players, when they first built that, how the players weren't getting any money from that. And shortly thereafter, he was traded to the Chiefs, along with Matt Castle and that deal. And that's sort of, it was icy there for a while. But that's sort of where the genesis came. And also, his comments during the ceremony in the stadium, which I put, in the story, where he said, I'm sorry, I'm just looking it up for you. I don't want you to take this organization for granted. I've been a lot of places. This is a special place with great leadership, great fans, great direction, and great coaching. Enjoy it. It's not like this everywhere. And that quote made people who either have worked with Mike or familiar with Mike, it certainly made them sort of tilt their head and be like, there's something going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Vrabel yelled at me when I asked him about it, so that's not really all that surprising. The thing that I guess I wonder here, Greg Bedard's with us from the Boston Sports Journal, is how well known is it? Is it one person? I'm not going to ask you for your sources or anything like that, but is it one person that you heard about the Vrabel Carthon thing, or is it almost pretty well known up there after his trip to Foxborough that, yeah, this relationship with the coach and the GM isn't going very well?
Well, I don't know if it was as, it came as a result of any conversations that happened in Foxborough when he was here. I don't know that. I will say that, I probably, one of my questions about Vrabel is, and the biggest thing when you're talking about, and I've been covering the league for 20 years, the biggest thing is what's the relationship like between the GM and the head coach, especially when they don't have a background together, or at least, outwardly they don't. And I was told they had, no background. Those kind of shotgun marriages in my experience covering the league just do not work. They hardly ever work. Like, you really need to either pick a strong head coach who hand selects his GM, or you need a strong GM who is in charge of hiring the coach. And, I probably heard from, 3 or 4 different people when I asked about Vrabel about, like, well, what's the relationship like with Vrabel and Ran? And they, universally said, like, there isn't, much of a relationship. There wasn't much of a background. I'm sure the stress of the season hasn't helped. Now, I don't know if it's a bad relationship at this point, but those kind of shotgun marriages and where things are going with this team, sort of gets people to the head coach and the general manager sort of start to retreat to their own camps. And that's when they start thinking about other possibilities.
Greg Bedard's with us. One of the fascinating lines in here that a lot of people are picking apart, and it's almost like, Greg, I feel like, if somebody has a certain view going into this story of yours that they read, then they interpret this line maybe differently than if they have a different view. I'm just going to read it out loud when talking about Ran Carthon, saying, quote, "There have been issues with Carthon's job performance even back to his 49ers days." Now, I know Ran Carthon from a jar of Vicks when they hired him as general manager. I remember he was a running back at Florida. I do wonder, there are a lot of people that are hearing that and saying, oh, well, maybe there's an undertone in what Bedard's writing. You wrote it. What do you what have you heard on that front? And what do you make about people that would take issue with that line in this report?
Well, I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't know the facts. I'm just relating, first, like why Vrabel might not think the Titans is an advantageous position for him. And, from what I've been told, and like you, I don't know Ran Carthon at all. I mean, from what I know about him is, he came up in the right way through the NFL and working his way through. He worked for a great organization, the 49ers. I know him. I don't know him at all. I know him to be from talking to people, certainly, very personable and the kind of guy who gets along with everybody and things like that. But like, as far as, Rand's job performance, I mean, I asked people like, well, how come, why wouldn't that work? And, that's the feedback that I got back. I don't know him at all. I'm not going to get into specifics because it's not like I'm reporting a story on the Titans and, making allegations, but, there are things around the scout community, not anything major. I would say that it's mostly minor, but that, some people take issue with. And I don't know if that has, I don't know whether it has anything to do with, his relationship with Mike Vrabel. I mean, I think that's sort of a minor thing when you're talking about, a head coach, whether he wants to stay in a certain place or he sees the potential for, a job opening in a place that he might want to work, that he's talked fondly of. It's more of like, do I see myself, is this a position where I want to be aligned with this person just overall in terms of our vision for building a franchise, building a team? Do we see things the right way or do we see things the same way? Is this the type of guy who's going to get me the type of players that I want, or is he going to get the type of players that he wants? And, I think those are more of the major decisions that would go into, any sort of, decision for Vrabel to say that, maybe he would want to work someplace else.
Greg Bedard's with us, Boston Sports Journal. The gist of the article was that the Patriots have probably found their guy in Gerard Mayo, who's on their coaching staff. I do wonder this question, though, Greg, that was not included in here, and it's kind of speculative, but that it is, if Mike Vrabel were fired, if he did not require draft pick compensation from the Crafts, do you think they'd be more interested in Vrabel, again, with no draft pick attached, or Mayo, who's never been a head coach and is currently on the coaching staff of the struggling Patriots?
Well, it's a good question, and I'm not really sure of the answer. I think I've been very impressed with the job that Mike has done coaching that team with, not great talent overall, especially at the quarterback position. I think that if you're the Crafts, you have to ask a lot of hard questions, both of him and Mayo and whoever they might hire, about the direction that they want to take the offense specifically. What's their view? I mean, because from afar, seeing the way they've hitched their wagons to Derrick Henry, the conservative nature, it's a lot of it is a lot of what Belichick believes in terms of the offense just needs to hold the ball, take care of the ball, make good decisions, put up a few points, but defense and special teams are gonna win the game for us. But I think it would definitely be interesting. Whether they would prefer Mayo or Vrabel, I'm not sure. A lot of it would depend on how much they promised Gerard Mayo when they signed him to a contract extension last offseason, and he took his name out of even interviewing for head coach jobs. Was anything promised to him at that point in time? How much do they want to keep their word, thinking that a guy like Vrabel wouldn't come available? Does it change the calculus for them? I think that the Crafts would certainly at least check in on the availability of Vrabel, and this is a franchise. This is an ownership group that if they think the guy is worth it, they will not be afraid to part with draft pick compensation for that coach, just like they did with Bill Belichick.
Last one for you, Greg. Were there any eyebrows raised when you were doing your research for this piece, which really, again, is about the future of the Patriots post-Bill Belichick? Were there any eyebrows raised by the Diana Rossini report on Thanksgiving that the Titans are absolutely no way parting with Vrabel at the end of the year, even with a trade or whatever it may be?
Not really. I mean, I was somewhat familiar with that report, and, Diana does, really good work. But I think there's sort of what gets left off is that these head coaches have a lot of leverage, and, similar to, some players in other sports. I mean, they have the ability to force their way out if they see another option. Of course, I don't think that the Crafts would tamper with Vrabel or anything like that. They're very, adherence to NFL protocols and things like that. But I think the most important question is, does Vrabel like the alignment with Ran Carthon? Does he see this working out for him? And if he has any apprehension about that, after I would assume it's not even a year where Rand's been hired by the Titans, does he want to stay in that situation? Does he want to stay in Tennessee? Would he like to work with somebody else? Is that possible? Or, would it be advantageous for him to use whatever leverage he might have to force his way into another situation?
Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal. Great work as always, Greg. Thank you so much for your time.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Greg Bedard basically saying, look, I'm not doing a story about the Tennessee Titans, but everybody I talk to is like, Vrabel and Ran Carthon really aren't getting along, which, again, we've heard. Your reaction, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025 here on a Titans Monday. And normally it's all about the game, but again, a very juicy Titans Monday, 1025, 1063 The Game.
while interest rates are... That's right. Genesis is rolling back interest rates to 0.0%. So that $5,000 diamond ring is yours for just $85 a month. Nothing's held back. Rings, earrings, bracelets, bands, certified natural diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, even luxury pre-owned Rolex watches. Just pick any item for that special someone and spread your payment.
As far as, Rand's job performance, I mean, I asked people like, well, how come, why wouldn't that work? And, that's the feedback that I got back. I don't know him at all. I'm not going to get into specifics because it's not like I'm reporting a story on the Titans and, making allegations, but, there are things around the scout community, not anything major. I would say that it's mostly minor, but that some people take issue with.
There you go. That was Greg Bedard just now here on Stillman and Company. And again, that was kind of the explanation of the line in his piece. And again, I have my thoughts on this, but the line in the piece was, quote, there have been issues with Carthon's shot performance even back to his 49er days. And again, what he's saying is, hey, I'm not doing a story on the Tennessee Titans, but, there's just some, in the scouting community, nothing major, but there are some questions about Ran Carthon's, just a little here and there. The text line is going crazy right now. And I have to say this, I think I side with the text line. I mean, I guess I'm just kind of looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, so there are issues with his job performance. Like what? Like what would be an example? And I think what he was trying to say in that cut was, I'm not trying to report on a story about the Tennessee Titans. This is a much larger piece about the Patriots. But at the same time, it's like, well, but you did write that, right? Like you did write that his job performance is in question, which is a pretty big allegation, even back to the 49ers. And I don't feel like he really totally I don't know. I don't want to, the guy took his time, came on the show, and for the most part, I believe what he's saying about the Vrabel Carthon dynamic. And I again, just trying to think of the right way to say this. For me, I heard things, off the record about the state of the organization and what's being said here and there, and things that, again, I don't feel comfortable talking about because it's not my place. But you can't write that in an article and then sit there and say, well, I've just heard some of that in the scouting community. Ian, that does kind of seem like a little bit of a chucking under the bus, right?
Maybe a little.
Like, it just seemed like, if you're going to write that, then say, oh, yeah, I talked to 5 scouts, and they all said he didn't know the difference between a running back and a wide receiver. At least, okay, there's that.
I mean, how many scouts does Bedard know?
I'm sure he knows a lot of scouts.
I guess he probably does. Maybe.
I mean, I'll do this, okay? The day before the Titans played the Falcons, I was at a college football game. Don't think it's hard to figure out which one I was at. And an NFL scout told me, and I'm not going to tell you which team, an NFL scout told me we were talking about the Titans, and he called Will Levis Will Leftus. And I said, Will Leftus? And he said, yeah, that's what we call him. Because he left Penn State, and he left Kentucky, and he didn't play in the bowl game. And I'm like, I actually heard that he wanted to play in the bowl game, but then they told him not to play in the bowl game. And the scout, who, he walked like a football scout. He was like, no, and just kind of walked off. But, I'm not going to come on the air and be like, there are questions from scouts about Will Levis's commitment because that one scout called him Will Leftus. You know what I mean, Ian?
Sounds fair.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I was kind of expecting more. I was expecting more juice. Texter says, why don't I do some investigating on the Boston report? I just had the guy on. What do you want me to do? Go up to Foxborough and ask everybody that he asked? Here's the one thing I do think. I do think Vrabel went up to New England and told everybody that he doesn't like Ran Carthon. And that's where Bedard's probably hearing that from the people he's talking to. And if you couldn't get that listening to the article, or listening to the interview, did you get that, Ian?
That Vrabel doesn't like Carthon?
That he probably went up there during that weekend that he was there in the Hall of Fame. And
I don't see Vrabel doing that, going up there and just trash talking a bunch of his, and I don't want to say employees, but, his colleagues. I don't see him doing that.
Oh, I do. I think Vrabel is a total bitcher. I bet he can play. I've always thought Vrabel's going to be the kind of guy who hates his boss no matter who his boss is. Not that Rand's his boss, but that he's always going to hate, just like he hates Belichick, just like I'm sure that he didn't always see eye to eye with Robinson, although it wasn't always talked that way. I think Vrabel's always going to hate his boss no matter what. His boss could give him every day off and give him infinity dollars, and he'd still find something to complain about. Texter says, Bedard was full of it. He didn't even believe what he was saying or what he wrote. He certainly didn't have a lot of conviction. But I also wonder, too, if that's a writer kind of thing, more so than a talk radio performer kind of thing. Because the and the talking a lot, that was very Charles Robinson of him. I don't know if you guys put those together, but I felt very Charles Robinson there, where it's like, wait a minute, did this guy just talk for 4 minutes, and did he really say anything in what he said? Texture says the interview didn't have anything concrete, just a bunch of speculation from afar. It's year one of Vrabel and Ran working together with a bad roster, and it's not abnormal to have issues. Now, I will say that. I do think that, but my big issue with all of this, now that we've talked to Bedard about it, is if you're going to say that, like, you know, they didn't have a previous relationship, we all know that. They said that when he got hired. It's not believed that they have much of one now. I think he kind of checked that box. If you're going to write there have been issues with Carthon's job performance even back to his 49er days, there's got to be something to it, right? Like, you can't tell us who told you that. Like, you can't tell us the source. But you have to say, like, yeah, there was a sense in San Francisco that he did X, Y, Z, or that he didn't do X, Y, Z. And I did not feel like Bedard was prepared to go there, and I don't know if he wasn't prepared to go there because it wasn't really there, or if he wasn't prepared to go there because he didn't feel like getting into, this one corner of the article that we care about, because we don't care about the whole rest of the article, which is about the Patriots. But again, if you're going to write it in an article, whether it's a one tiny little corner of the article or whether it's the headline, there should be some explanation there to at least kind of back it up a little bit. Now, I do want to enjoy this one moment, and you guys in the text line are just going crazy. So we will get back to your phones on this, but I need to enjoy this for 1 second. Ian, we have some breaking news that we have got to address here.
Oh, yes, we do. Some hockey news at that.
Please give it to me.
Well, the Minnesota Wild have fired their head coach, Dean Evison.
Who is a good coach, by the way.
They've been off to a little bit of a slow start. I think I just saw 7 losses in a row or something. They've had a little rough stretch. So they are hiring former Preds head coach John Hynes as their next head coach.
Yes! Yes!
And they will be here Thursday night.
Yes! Yes! Oh, my God. Let me say this to the Predators. You have to win Thursday. You can't lose on Thursday. I am so happy the Predators hired John Hynes. I'm so happy they fired him. I'm so happy the Wild hired him, because now you're going to see him stink with them and be mediocre, and there won't be any more question it's not his fault anymore. Oh, my God, I feel like I'm about to explode. We have coach and GM drama in football, and we've got John Hynes coaching a division rival in hockey, and the Predators are good. 615-737-1025, more of your phone, Stillman and Company. We continue 1025, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. Again, we had Greg Bedard on of the Boston Sports Journal, who wrote at the Boston Sports Journal yesterday, quote, that Vrabel and Ran Carthon don't have a relationship, and that they didn't have a previous relationship, and it's believed they don't have much of one now. Quote, there have been issues with Carthon's job performance even back to his 49ers days. And when asked about it, Greg Bedard just said, basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, Ian, but back me up if you think this is inaccurate, that, I'm not really reporting on the Titans or anything crazy like that, but, just some minor stuff here or there, just, you hear around in the scouting community about, it's a, little here and there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Doesn't that kind of seem like it's like falsely accusing Ran Carthon?
I don't know if he's accusing him of anything, but maybe just some bad info, or I don't know about bad info, but it doesn't seem quite right.
There have been issues with Carthon's job performance even back to his 49er days.
Like what? He didn't have a whole lot to do in the 49ers. I mean, what was he doing that was so bad that they screwed up so poorly? They're making all types of good picks.
So I guess I'm a little torn here from a couple reasons. Number one, Greg Bedard's been doing this for 30 years. Again, I compared him when this story came out, and I hadn't talked to him or anything like that, to Kaharski, right? Like, he had been at the big network for a while. Kaharski votes in the Hall of Fame, had been at ESPN. Now he's doing his own thing. Bedard's doing his own thing. And, I don't think Paul would write something like that if Paul didn't, wasn't hearing it, right? So it's like, okay, what are you? Just a little minor here or there. And it's like, that's not the same as the way that I kind of read this, which is there have been issues with Carthon's job performance even back to his 49er days, which means there's issues with his job performance now, and there have been issues when they hired that guy. So what are the issues? Well, he waits 3 days to clip his toenails instead. Can he not scout? Does he not go to things when he's supposed to? Does he? I'll tell you a story that a couple years ago I went to a college game, and that a Titan scout was supposed to be there. And it was listed that the Titan scout would be there, and the Titan scout was not there. And then somebody said that the Titan scout was at the game. And I'm like, no, sir, he was not. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, no, sir, he was not. But then I thought, I'm like, well, I don't want to say that he wasn't there, because maybe he was there and I just didn't see him. It's a big football stadium. And if I sit there and say that this Titan scout was not there, that's throwing him under the bus when he probably wasn't, but I don't know. And this kind of feels the same way. And I understand, I understand Bedard with the sense of, well, I'm really writing, in the Boston Sports Journal for all the people in Boston to talk about Belichick and Kraft and Vrabel and Mayo in the future. This is just some, throwaway line about Ran Carthon, so I just added it in there. And I didn't expect that it would blow up in Nashville, Tennessee, but then the more I think about it, and honestly, I'm processing this at the same time a lot of you guys are, the more I think about this, the more I'm like, well, as somebody on the radio, I want people to listen to me. And while I understand that I can say something about some coach on another team, and Bobby Slowick probably won't hear what I thought about his performance. That David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, probably will not hear me say that I think he's a freaking buffoon. But I do want people to listen to the radio. And if David Tepper listens to the radio, or somebody says, man, that guy in Nashville was just killing you, says you're a total buffoon, you put together a clown show of a team, that you're going to ruin the quarterback, and David Tepper were to say, well, why do you think that? I wouldn't be like, well, just a little here and there. I'd be like, no, look at your team. You guys suck. You've been owning the team for 5 years. You got 10 coaches. Frank Reich was terrible. We all knew that in Indianapolis. What do you like? So what's crazy about all this too? Floyd knew Bedard. And this is the kind of thing, How much do you think that and his explanation of it, Ian, would have pissed Floyd off?
Yeah, he would not like that.
Oh, he'd have been pissed. Like, he would have been mad about that. And so it's like, again, I'm not saying he's like Peter King, but he is like a pretty reputable dude. So it'd be like if Peter King were to say something like that, and then Peter King were to come on and be like, well, just some minor stuff there. And I'm not writing a story about the Titans. It's like, well, but if you put it in there, then people are going to read it and think, oh, yeah, man, the Titans really hired this Ran Carthon. He ain't worth a damn. Apparently, he wasn't worth a damn in San Francisco. And it's like, well, what backing is there? I mean, I really don't think Ran Carthon's doing a very good job with the Titans right now, and I don't like his lack of accountability and all that stuff and all the things that have been driving me crazy about the competence of what I call the commission, this Vrabel Carthon thing. And I absolutely think that they do not like each other. I absolutely think that Vrabel does not like Ran Carthon. I believe it, and I don't even need Greg Bedard to write that for me to think it. That being said, this feels pretty hard to convict on. Like, this feels like Rand got done wrong. This feels like they did Ran Carthon dirty. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. I mean, I almost wonder if I owe Ran Carthon an apology for spending all day today, talking about this story and like, oh, we're going to get Bedard on. And then Bedard comes on and it's like, well, I kind of heard it, kind of didn't hear it, it's like, I'm not sorry for the Kevin Byard thing, which was your fault. I'm not sorry about the roll the dice, play the board. I'm not sorry about being negative about draft picks. I'm not sorry about really anything else I've said, but I am sorry for spending an hour talking about, here we go, and then having the guy on there and him not really being able to defend it. I mean, I'm sure Vrabel went up to Foxborough and kissed a bunch of butt and, probably talked a bunch. Yeah, I disagree with you, Ian, that I do think that Vrabel's the kind of guy who would go to Foxborough and complain to everybody about what he doesn't like with the Titans. And then Vrabel said what he said at halftime of that Patriots game and got mad at me for asking about it. I believe all of that. But I don't, this throws Ran under the bus. And I just think there's got to be more of an explanation there. If you're going to throw Ran under the bus, if you're going to say his job performance was bad at San Francisco, you're going to have an example of that. You're going to have an example of oh, yeah, I heard from a source that Kyle Shanahan told Ran Carthon that they didn't need him to go to the combine because they didn't trust his opinion on these guys. You say something like that, and it's like, whoa. You just say, yeah, I've heard some stuff in the scouting world that, it's like, I mean, I've heard things. I've heard things about the Titans. And Ian knows what I've heard and where they've come from. And Ian, you would say that what I'm referring to directly, what we were talking about during the break, comes from somebody who would count as a point A source, right?
Probably so.
Okay. And that what it is that I heard people would want to know or cling to, or if I told you what I heard from this point A source,
people would start thinking.
Yeah, it'd be but it's not enough to start that, right? What I've told you is not enough to start that big of an issue just off of a little here and there, right?
Mm-hmm. Probably fair. Yep.
So if you're going to write that, then you've got to, have some juice behind it. So I got to tell you, I think I owe Ran Carthon an apology on this for making such a big deal about it. And for there to not feel like there was a lot of conviction behind that line. And maybe there is something there. I don't know. 615-737-1025. Boy, a lot of people want to weigh in on this. So that's what we'll do. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. See if I need to tell any of the fine folks out there about anything overly important. I don't think I do. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
One of my questions about Vrabel is, and the biggest thing when you're talking about, and I've been covering the league for 20 years, the biggest thing is what's the relationship like between the GM and the head coach, especially when they don't have a background together, or at least, outwardly they don't. And I was told they had, no background. Those kind of shotgun marriages, in my experience covering the league, just do not work. They hardly ever work. Like, you really need to either pick a strong head coach who hand selects his GM, or you need a strong GM who is in charge of hiring the coach. And, I probably heard from, 3 or 4 different people when I asked about Vrabel about, like, well, what's the relationship like with Vrabel and Ran? And they, universally said, like, there isn't, much of a relationship. There wasn't much of a background. I'm sure the stress of the season hasn't helped.
There you go. That was Bedard earlier today. So, I think there is something to that, right? Like the shotgun marriage between Vrabel and Ran, and that those don't work in the NFL, and that, again, I believe Vrabel's a complainer. I do. And I don't think it's about complaining per se. Like, I don't think Vrabel's the kind of person that sits there and just, says, oh, I wish I were skinny, or, oh, I wish I were rich, or, oh, I wish I were. But I think he's a complainer from the standpoint that he looks down on everybody else. So if everybody else isn't him, then it's like, it's like I laugh thinking about the idea of Vrabel going to the Patriots, where really the only thorn in his ass is me and maybe me and Paul. And that, outside of that, like, the media covers him fairly around here, but they really don't go after him, or they don't parse every single word he says. Well, there's a million of those up there. Like, it's 100 times worse up there. And he knows that because he played there. But I think he's just such a complainer that he probably went to Foxborough and complained about the situation he's in. I believe all of that. I do. And what I have a hard time with, though, is the testimony of there have been issues with Carthon's job performance even back to his 49er days, and there not being much there to back it up. And I asked Ian during the break, I was like, should I have gone after him over that? Should I have yelled at him and been like, well, hold on, wait a minute, you wrote that, you? And Ian says no. I don't know, like, probably would have been more entertaining if we had done that. I'm not sure it would have accomplished anything more than that. One texter says, I understand why you didn't call him out on it. It could ruin your chances of getting another shot at talking to someone with a real scoop. I don't worry about that. I don't. Again, if I was worried about talking to somebody with a real scoop, do you think I'd go to the press conferences and ask Vrabel why Aaron Brewer's still playing center? Or do you think I'd kiss his tush? And then that way I could be like, well, what I've heard according to my sources is, it's that kind of thing. I told Barry Trotz 2 weeks ago that I was giving up on the season, which, by the way, looks very bad now. That I said that, very wrong, I should say, that I said that. But I don't know. Texter into the text line says, I just don't think Ran Carthon had enough experience. He was only the director of player personnel for 2 years in San Francisco, and there isn't much of a track record for scouting and drafting. And 2021 was bad for them with Trey Lance, and 2022 was nothing to brag about other than getting lucky with Brock Purdy. So even then, I don't, debating whether or not Ran Carthon should have been hired as the general manager, that's a totally different, aisle of the supermarket. That's different. This is saying, guys, I'm telling you, this is basically inside info that Ran Carthon did a bad job in San Francisco. But then when asked for kind of at least a little bit more information on the fact that he said that Ran Carthon did a bad job, there wasn't really anything to that other than, well, the scouting world just kind of whatever, right? Well, okay, but the coaching world hated Belichick for forever. The coaching world basically thinks that the Patriot way, with all these coaches that have all fired, and I think that, for the most part, the coaching world is right about this. The Patriots got lucky with Tom Brady. They weren't smarter than everybody else, but for years, all these other coaches had to suck it up and deal with the fact that they were going to lose these games, and everybody was going to think, you're just not as smart as the other guy. He's smarter than you. He works harder than you. He's better at football than you. And really, you're sitting there saying, no, they have Tom Brady. I have Mark Sanchez. That has been kind of an issue. So if that's all you're rolling off of, like, that's kind of tough. Like, it's hard for me to honestly, the one thing that I get mad at with fans, and I think this year's draft class is a good example of this, which is I have no opinion of this year's draft class, right? Right now, I don't think Skaronski's playing well enough for 11th overall guard, but my standard for an 11th overall guard is going to be really, really high because I don't think you should take a guard at 11, and I had such a strong conviction about that when it happened that I am inherently biased to demanding excellence, right? Kind of the same thing with Spears. Like, I see Zay Flowers running around all over the place. You guys keep telling me Spears is so fast and so explosive. Like, let's see him take a kickoff past the 20-yard line, please. And then with Levis, you know me, I'm very cautious about quarterbacks one way or another because Mariota I fell in love with, and we all remember how that played out. So I have no real true opinion about this draft class, and I don't think that we'll even know at the end of this year unless it's like a Javon Curse or a Micah Parsons type blow up in the first year, and you don't have that from any of these guys. But when I hear people that tell me all the time, and there's so many fans that say of the idea that this draft class is really, really good, so many fans are like, Jared, look at this draft class. It's awesome. I'm like, no. What I believe when somebody says that is I believe that they're telling me that they want to believe that this draft class is awesome, so they've convinced themselves that it is. Well, I will be completely honest. Like, I hate the current power structure of the Tennessee Titans. I hate the lack of accountability with none of us knowing who actually made the decision to sign Andre Dillard, for example. I don't believe in the idea of two men having equal power and that working together. I certainly don't believe in it working when the team's not very good, because then I think it becomes I didn't want that guy, but he wanted that guy. And every time I hear Diana Rossini say, oh, no, it's great between them, or I hear TD say, oh, no, it's great between them, I don't think Diana's lying. I don't think TD's lying, but I think that is kind of just what they're told. Like, they talk to people, and the people they talk to want it out there that everything's great. But again, that might be my own inherent bias. But if my inherent bias is to, get invested in, oh, look at this drama and Ran Carthon's terrible and this is that, then this article would be red meat for that. Like this little nugget, this piece of this article. But when pressed for more information on it, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot more there other than talking to Patriots people. Here's what Patriots people have said Vrabel's gripes are. That's what I view this as. And I just don't think that's fair to Ran Carthon at all. And you're talking to somebody who last week said that if they own the team, they'd fire him at the end of the year. And I think that is fair. Well, I don't think it's fair, but I think the NFL's not fair. I think it's in the best interest of the franchise to move on from all of this at the end of the year, and that includes Vrabel and Ran, and just start over. But, that's not right. That's just not fair. When somebody says, oh, yeah, again, the insinuation that he only got the job because the NFL wanted the Titans to hire a minority candidate, which is a pretty strong accusation in and of itself. And then to say that he wasn't even good in San Francisco, and then, just a little minor here. It's kind of tough for me to stomach one way or another. One texter says, Vrabel was in on hiring Ran. Why would he not like the guy he helped hire? I think it's all baloney. I don't think Vrabel helped Ran Carthon get hired. This just, I don't want to sound, like I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't want to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about here, but I'm pretty sure that Vrabel was not in the decision-making process when it came to who the new GM was going to be. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. We'll roll through some more of your phones. Plus, One texter says that this is like Al Capone's vault. No. Geraldo Rivera went across the street from where they shot that and got hammered because he was so upset with how embarrassed he was. I just let Greg Bedard say whatever, tell us the truth. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in here on the program. Stillman and Company. And here's the one thing that is just driving me crazy, and I still do not believe. We'll get to that next. 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let me tell you, I'm supposed to tell people, Ian, about how much I love Twice Daily right now. I love Twice Daily. And not only do I love Twice Daily, but I love the fact that Twice Daily's promotion about if the Titans score at the end of any half, you get a free half sub the next day. So today, you'd be getting a free half sub because Nick Folk made a 53-yarder at the end of the first half. That's right. So download the Twice Daily app today. Join the loyalty program to unlock special discounts. And again, if the Titans score any points in the last 2 minutes of either half, and they did yesterday, loyalty members get a free half sub through the app. And that'll be the same way on Sunday when they play Indianapolis. If they score in the last 2 minutes, then you're going to get a free half sub through the app on Monday. That's right, Twice Daily. They are the best. Get what you crave at Twice Daily. Made to order sandwiches, bakery, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Fresh items made to go. Hot drink, cold drinks. And, of course, stop by the beer cave to unwind with a cold one. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day. What do you make about your school, The Ohio State University, losing yesterday to Michigan? And now there's a lot of talk about Ryan Day can beat every other team in the country, but he cannot beat Michigan, which you know is unacceptable there. And the name that keeps popping up is Vrabel's.
That's a scary scenario. I mean, because if Ryan Day has a possibility of getting fired for losing one game and Mike Vrabel's name keeps coming up, that means there's some smoke somewhere. And if there's some smoke somewhere, there's a fire. So even though there's speculation and people don't actually know, but if his name keeps coming up with this or the Patriots or whatever, then there's something there. But at the end of the day, it all depends on these 3 and 4 games. And if the Tennessee Titans lose these 3 or 4 games and it gets so bad in the organization, you don't think that he might want to go back to Ohio State or go to the Patriots because it's so intolerable in that situation. So we just got to sit back like days of our lives, like watching a story, and just sit back and watch what happens.
As an Ohio State fan, do you want Vrabel to be the coach? You guys were teammates at Ohio State.
Which part? Here at the Titans or Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Can we go to commercial break?
Chris Sanders yesterday on the pregame show, he doesn't even want Vrabel at Ohio State, which is Ohio State going to make a move on Ryan Day? I don't know. Let's go to your phones as promised here on the program. Michael has been waiting patiently. He's up next here. Thank you for calling and waiting. Phone lines, by the way, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. What's up, Michael?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. You having a good day?
Yep, go.
All right, good deal. So yesterday on social media, you made a couple comments, and I just wanted to ask you a follow-up on it about guys you would have done differently. You keep bringing up Corey Brewer and how that was a bad move to sign
Aaron
him
Brewer.
to a $4 million
Brewer
deal.
played basketball. But Aaron Brewer, yes.
You know what I meant. Sorry about that. But who would you have signed, and what would you have done differently if you were the front office?
So I know I have this on really good authority and not, again, I talk to some people who I have this on really good authority that Connor McGovern, who is the starting center of the New York Jets, who has been a starter in the NFL for like 5 or 6 years and weighs over 300 pounds, wanted to be a Titan, ended up signing for like $1 million and change, like the league minimum, to be the starting center for the Jets. By the way, the Jets run the same scheme that you run on the offensive line. Now, their offensive line's not good either, and they have Keith Carter coaching them, and you've got Keith Carter's assistant coaching you. But he is better than Aaron Brewer, and he is fatter than Aaron Brewer, which is important, and he can snap the ball to the quarterback. So that's the first place. The Titans weren't even interested at all in Connor McGovern. Even as a backup, they weren't interested, and he's a starter in the NFL. So that's the first. I mean, but you're sitting there acting like there's nothing better than what they did with Aaron Brewer. They gave Aaron Brewer a second-round tender. What that means is that Aaron Brewer, in order for another team to sign Aaron Brewer, they would have to be willing to give up their second-round pick to you in order to sign Aaron Brewer, or you could match the contract that they were going to give. Nobody was going to give up a second-round pick for Aaron Brewer. The problem is that comes with a $4.3 million tender. Had the Titans given Aaron Brewer the right of first refusal tender at $2.6 million, they could have had him to play center as well. The point I'm making is they could have done that as opposed to the $4.3 million tender, and that $1.7 million is not nothing when you're pinching pennies like the Titans were doing this offseason, which is what makes it incompetent. Do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, but they're really not pinching pennies. That's not the issue here. The issue here is a lack of talent overall from top.
So then why didn't they go out and get better players? Why didn't they sign Mike McGlinchey, who I also have it on good authority wanted to be here? Why did they not sign Ben Powers, the guard from Baltimore that Denver signed? Why didn't they sign Zach Allen, the pass rusher Denver signed? When you signed Arden Key, why were you not interested in those guys? By the way, I don't know if you've noticed Denver, but it's helped them.
Yeah, overall, we're talking about one win here versus the Titans with Denver. And we'll take every win we can get. But at the end of the day, you work on the extremes.
So what you're trying to argue is there's nothing the Titans front office could have done at all to avoid being as terrible as they are right now, where they have to hang on to their tushes in the fourth quarter to beat the worst team in the NFL.
Well, no, I think they did what they needed to, which was to move away from a general manager that made a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad draft picks, but you want to pin everything back to Vrabel and really now give John
So
Robinson
what you're telling me is that John Robinson made it so bad that there is nothing they could have done to be any better at all.
I think it was pretty bad. I mean,
so here's where I don't understand this. Thank you for your call, Michael. Here's where I don't understand this. Why are the team draft? They busted on Jalen Reagor in the 2020 draft. Why are they good? I mean, if it's like, oh no, Robinson made bad draft picks, why can other teams make bad draft picks? Why can the Denver Broncos, for instance, and I keep using them because on the day of free agency, depending upon what website you trust, because there is, the salary cap's fake and the way it's reported is ridiculous anyways, and these different websites have different amounts of money for what teams had. You either had the same amount of money as the Broncos or you had more than the Broncos, and the Broncos went out and got a starting right tackle, they got a starting right guard, they got a pass rusher, like they spent in the offseason. How are the Broncos all of a sudden a much better football team when they didn't even have picks because they traded them for Russell Wilson? To me, it is lazy to act like the Titans had a good offseason and to say, well, there is nothing they could have done. John Robinson made it so bad that you have to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, which is what you are right now. You, Carolina, and you're right there with Carolina in case you guys didn't notice yesterday. You're right there with Carolina. You, Carolina, Chicago, New England, and the Giants. And to think that that's where you belong and it's all John Robinson's fault is ridiculous. To think that they did the best they could when they signed Andre Dillard and Arden Key and Azeez Al-Shaair, and they went into the season with no right tackle, and they've got a 275-pound center that they're paying $4.3 million to, and that there's nothing they could have done is ridiculous, and it's lazy. And a lot of you believe that. Travis is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Travis?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I completely agree. We should have never got rid of John Robinson. Obviously,
I didn't say that.
Well, I mean, look at the season after we got rid of him. It's been a dumpster fire, and not only that, with Rob and with Vrabel, there was understanding. He would get the players, Vrabel would coach them up, and that was his responsibility. Now you got Vrabel, speaking in Ron's ear, and I understand he had his players here and there with Clowney and a few others, but now it's like they're collaborating and it's not really meshing very well. It's almost like we're getting some average players here and there, and before you know it, we just got a hot mess. I mean, that's basically what we have. We have a middle linebacker that the announcers are high in praise on.
Oh, my God, dude. I heard that, too. Travis, you just saved that whole call of you saying a bunch of words I'm not sure I understood. Thank you for your call. With something that I absolutely agree with, which is, Ian, did you hear that yesterday when Schlereth and
were they praising Monty Rice?
No, Azeez Al-Shaair. I mean, they lost their pants over Azeez. I'm like, Azeez is a backup. Like, Azeez kind of sucks. Like, I mean, he's that role that he had as the third guy behind Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner. That's the perfect role for him. Let the good players make all the good plays, and then when they need you for that one or two, there you go. But like to be the starting inside backer for the Titans, no. And on TV, they were all about it. Other than that, I'm not sure I understood anything that caller just said. I think it was like, it was bad then and it's bad now. And some of this is going to require somebody's going to have to hit a home run somewhere around the way. One texter says, what is the previous caller's motivation for defending all the Titans' offseason mistakes? Good question. 615-737-1025. So, we got a lot of just random stuff that I'm so excited about. John Hynes is coaching Minnesota Thursday night at Bridgestone Arena. Oh, God, do not lose, Predators. But there's some more coaching stuff that happened over the weekend that we got to get to. And so we'll do that next. Still in the company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Were you following all this with Coach Stoops last night? No, I literally heard it yesterday. I think Ryan was the first person. He was like, Stoops to A&M, eh? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But, yeah, I guess now he's staying. But, I mean, I got to talk to him. I'm out of the whatever on that one.
Will Levis yesterday after the game has asked us, what do you think about this whole Coach Stoops to A&M thing? He's like, yeah, been kind of busy. I haven't really been paying attention. But, Ian, were you following this Saturday night? Mark Stoops
a little
to A&M?
bit. Yeah, I was traveling.
I could not believe it. By the way, the amount of people that tweeted me whenever I would criticize Will Levis yesterday for his performance, or when I would talk about Mark Stoops taking the A&M job, that were like, you're just upset because your Cardinals lost this weekend. I'm like, I don't care about that when it's talking about – I don't care that Will Levis went to Kentucky. What do I care about that with? It's very, very heartbreaking, and yet predicted during six-pack picks that we would find a way to choke. I picked Louisville to win a close game. They lost a close game, but I knew they weren't going to cover the 7.5. So I was fully prepared for that. But Mark Stoops beats Louisville on Saturday morning, afternoon-ish, which really we beat ourselves. We totally choked, and it was very embarrassing. Then all of a sudden, before I go to bed, I watched the Barry Sanders documentary Saturday night. I'm getting ready to go to bed, and I see that A&M is about to hire Mark Stoops to be the next coach at Texas A&M. And I thought, Mark Stoops? Now, I like Stoops. I know Stoops a little bit. And I think Stoops is a good coach. Now, the thing that I have a hard time with when it comes to Stoops is, and I've been incredibly impressed because when he took over Kentucky, they were a crap hole when Joker Phillips left. And they've been respectable. They're never going to win anything of note. But I think he's got it so good at Kentucky. He makes $9 million a year, wins 7 games, 8 games, 9 games, who cares? By this time of the year, they've moved on to basketball anyways. So you're never going to get fired. So you're going to make $9 million a year every year. And all you got to do is keep winning 6, 7, 8 games. That's all you got to do. You're going to go to A&M. You're going to go to Texas A&M. And the reason why he would want to do that is because that's what Bear Bryant did, right? Bear Bryant was the coach of Kentucky, thought that he was never going to get the respect he deserved, even though he had won a national championship at Kentucky, thought he was never going to get the respect he deserved, so he went to A&M because he always thought that Adolph Rupp and basketball got more attention than football because it did. And so he goes to A&M and he wins there, and then he goes to Alabama and he wins there. And that's exactly what Stoops. I'm going to be like Bear Bryant. I'm going to leave Kentucky because I've been good for Kentucky. I'm going to go to A&M and I'm going to win big there with all their resources, and they're going to pay me $100 gajillion because I am a great coach. And I'm like, dude, you do not know how good you have it. I saw this happen to Charlie Strong when he went from Louisville to Texas. So Stoops, I wake up in the morning getting ready to do the pregame show, and he's not the coach anymore. I'm like, what the hell happened while I was asleep? And apparently they rescinded the offer because the fans got so mad about it. Now, I'm going to give Texas A&M fans credit. Now, I'm not sure this Mike Elko is going to do much better, and he's the new Jeremy Pruitt, the people's coach. But at least they didn't do what Tennessee fans did when Tennessee fans, made up all that stuff about, Greg Schiano was involved in Jerry Sandusky, and that's why we really don't want him. At least A&M fans are like, we don't want him because we don't think he's a good enough coach, which I'm okay with. At least you're telling the truth. I don't think you're going to win any more games with Elko, and I think that what you realize is when you're that crazy, people don't want your job anymore. And I don't think Tennessee fans would have wanted Josh Heupel if they got a vote, and I think Josh Heupel's done a pretty good job. But that was a wild turn of events, and I think the luckiest person in all of this is Mark Stoops. Because, he's going to say, like, oh, yeah, at my heart I'm a Wildcat. Baloney. But they rescinded the offer. You'll probably get some more money at UK, and you can keep winning, 5, 6, 7 games every year, 8 games, get the occasional 10, get to a nice little bowl. You'll never be in the Sugar Bowl, but that's okay. It's basketball season. They'll be okay. And so, to me, that would have been wild. Now, here's the other thing I want to get to. So, Levis is asked about Stoops, right? And we played Levis's answer where he's like, yeah, Tannehill texted me. I don't know. Again, he was busy with the Panther game. So, at the end of the Levis press conference, Joe Rexrode had to ask the same question.
Were you following along with the, real quick, the Coach Stoops to A&M?
Yeah, I was just saying, I heard it.
Boo! Boo! Who booed Joe? I gotta know. I loved it. Oh, my God. You could just hear the local media. And I am very critical at times of our local media. Sometimes, I think they do a good job overall, but every now and then, I get triggered. But I got to give him credit. Joe asked that question. You could hear it. Could you not hear that at the press conference? Everybody turning around looking at Joe being like, they just asked him that. And I'm sitting there listening to the press conference after the game yesterday, and I thought to myself, was Joe Rexrode sleeping during the press conference?
He addressed it this morning, said he was just very tired.
Oh, so he was tired.
Yes.
So I got a new nickname for him. We've got a lot of nicknames. We got Bad Take Joe. We've got Joey Stacks, a.k.a. Joey Stackhouse, for Joe Rexrode. I'm trying to think if we have another nickname for Joe in there. I'm sure.
Well, there's GB Joe.
Oh, there's GB Joe.
Yep.
I got a new one I came up with all by myself. You ready for this?
Ready?
Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe.
What do you think of that? Oh, Joseph Robinette Rexrode Jr., Sleepy Joe. All original, didn't get it from anywhere else. I just came up with it myself. I think that's what we should all start calling him. Sleepy Joe Rexrode. What do you think?
We can do better.
I like it, and I like how original it is, too. That's going to do it for us. We are out of here. John Hynes is the coach of the Wild, and they're going to be playing the Predators on Thursday. Oh, my God, this is going to be an incredible week. The Commodore Hour is coming up next.